All right, let's get it. Drive time. Thursday afternoon, 13 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Cold front here in Utah, cold front here in Salt Lake City. It is rainy and very cold downtown. A lot of snow in the mountains today and tomorrow. We're going to warm up a little bit over the weekend, and it looks like next week as of now looks pretty good. Happy Thursday to you, and as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass today, producing the program. Good guest lists, number of different things going on. The NBA play-in continued last night. We did not get the same quality of basketball last night that we did on Tuesday, but we are getting closer and closer now to understanding what the format will look like prior to the start of the playoffs coming up this weekend. Tyler Hero was really good last night in Miami, was able to beat Chicago in Chicago, and they advance on to the eighth-place game coming up on Friday night. The Mavs had no issues really at all with the Sacramento Kings. We had a vintage Klay Thompson game. So we advance on now to Friday's action before we understand what the landscape will look like. It's going to be the Heat in Atlanta to take on Quinn Snyder of the Atlanta Hawks. And Alex Jensen continues to coach for the Dallas Mavericks, and they're going to be at the Grindhouse, FedEx Forum in Memphis, Tennessee, coming up tomorrow night at 7:30. And then we advance on to the postseason beginning on Saturday. We do know what some of the matchups will look like. So Saturday's action will be Detroit and New York at Madison Square Garden. Milwaukee is going to take on Indiana in Indianapolis. Dame Lillard, by the way, has been cleared to stop taking his blood-thinning medication for his blood clots. He will miss game one. We'll see what his status is moving forward. Tough first-round matchup. A good team's going to go home with the Clippers and the Nuggets, and then, of course, the Timberwolves and the Lakers. That is your Saturday NBA playoff action. Transfer portal is open in college football. Some rumors regarding the University of Utah and BYU as well. Wide receiver is going to be on campus for the Utes, at least making a campus visit. So we'll do some college football on the program today. We'll do some transfer portal stuff on the program today. And Utah men's basketball made another addition via the transfer portal. We'll tell you who it is, and we'll get into some of that on the show. 1 week away today from the NFL draft. Shedeur Sanders is giving a private workout to the New York Football Giants today. Visited the Pat McAfee show, which means I had to watch some of it, which is not my favorite thing. Not a good look for the New York Jets, how they handled Aaron Rodgers on the way out, but Aaron Rodgers is currently focused on his personal life, apparently still considering retirement. Mentioned the New York Giants, and Brian Daboll talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. So some NFL offseason stuff on the program today. Real Salt Lake will be back in action coming up on Saturday. A 7:30 first kick at America First Field against Toronto on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. And tomorrow, a very exciting announcement that the Miller family will be taking the reins as the new majority owners of Real Salt Lake. So that's going to be tomorrow morning. Miller family sent out a email last night with the invite. So we'll get to some of that on the show today. By all accounts, this is a very, very positive development for a club that's had a lot of ownership transition over the past little bit, the past few years, something I'm uniquely qualified to talk about on the show. So a little RSL on the program today, in addition to all the other stuff we have going on. Good guest listen on Thursday. Right out of the gates, our guy Richard Smith will be live in studio. Excited to have Smitty in. We'll do some NBA playoffs. We'll do some NBA lottery. We'll do some Utah Jazz and kind of put the season for the Jazz to bed and look ahead to the NBA draft on June the 25th. Reminder, our NBA draft coverage, really excited for it. It's going to be myself, Gordy Chiesa, and one Bill Riley. Back together. The three of us have done a lot of NBA drafts over the years, and we're looking to maybe be out and about on location. We'll keep you up to date with that if you guys want to come hang out with us to watch, hopefully, the next future positive step for Jazz basketball after we find out the lottery order coming up on May the 12th. Dave McMenamin, our celebrity reporter who covers the NBA for ESPN, will stop by the program today in the 3 o'clock hour. We're going to bring in the head coach of Real Salt Lake, Pablo Mastroeni, today on a cold and rainy Thursday afternoon. We'll do some sports court, as we are wont to do on a Thursday with our friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Richard Smith, Dave McMenamin, Pablo Mastroeni, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, on a Thursday afternoon. You know, not a lot of great competitive basketball last night, but we did see a little vintage Klay Thompson. And I'm always reminded when Clay gets hot like that, 5 of 5 from 3 in the second quarter, he's just so fun to watch shoot the basketball.
One of the skills in basketball that's it's going to translate, right? You may lose a step defensively. Klay Thompson's not among the top 5 wing defenders in the NBA, as I honestly think he was at one point, especially come postseason time. But man, that shooting stroke is still one of the best we have ever seen in the game of basketball. And yeah, always fun when that comes out. And yeah, of course, you look across the country out to the Bay. Steph's still doing it. Draymond's still playing at a pretty high level. I think that we're getting really close, Spence, to the time when that's not a reality. But man, watching these guys do it one last time maybe is pretty entertaining.
It is for sure. So, as I've been talking about, I know a lot of people around here are sour right now on the landscape of pro basketball, and I understand why. A lot of great players decide that they just don't feel like doing their job night in and night out, and that's not a lot of fun. But March Madness always serves as this great appetizer because you're reminded of what basketball looks like when the players care. And NBA playoffs, man, it's so fun. So, we'll see what happens on Friday, and then we're high speed out of the postseason coming up over the weekend. Our first guest today, live in studio, Richard Smitty Smith. But before we get to Smitty, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it is points, rebounds, or assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in, which is going on right now. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which you get you and a +1, a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. And when you make that first $5 bet, you are going to get $50 instantly added into your account. You don't even have to win the bet to get the 50. It's on the house. So download the app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, kind of an odd time in the landscape of college athletics. It still is odd that this spring transfer portal in the world of college football that opened up on Wednesday and will close on the 25th is just kind of a little truncated space to see what you can do to add some talent. And, of course, the transfer portal is open in college basketball, has been open in college basketball for quite some time. So a couple of pieces of news to watch out for as far as the University of Utah Athletic Department goes. So we talked about this with Bill yesterday, voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. What will Coach Witt do over the next, 8-9 days to maybe add some pieces to the puzzle prior to, a little bit of a break? And then, of course, your high-speed ahead of the fall. It'll be here before you know it. And Kyle has been asked about, and Jason has been asked about as well. Jason Beck has been asked about as well. The current situation with the wide receivers at the University of Utah, where on paper, it's just a lot of players that we really don't know. And, a lot of players that do not have a lot of experience playing for the University of Utah. And so the wide receiver position certainly is something to watch out for. And our buddy Josh Furlong over at KSL is reporting that Micah Hudson is set to visit Utah this weekend for the spring game. So Micah Hudson began his college career as a freshman at Texas Tech and then committed to Texas A&M. He is a former 5-star recruit. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining and a red shirt if he wants to use it as well. He's a Texas kid, a 5-star recruit from the 2024 class, number 16 overall prospect in the country, according to 247, and has great stats when you go back to high school. He does look the part. He's got good size. He's got good strength. He has good measurables. Looks to be a very elite athlete. And so we'll see what happens here. But, we wondered yesterday whether or not wide receiver would be the position that Utah would try to make an addition to. And it looks like as of now, according to the reports, they will have a 5-star recruit out of high school visiting campus this weekend for the Forever 22 game. So some exciting stuff there. Utah basketball has landed a transfer named Elijah Moore. Okay, so Elijah Moore, Syracuse guard. So that's the third transfer portal commitment of the cycle, joining James Okonkwo and Terrence Brown with Utah's transfer portal additions. Kendall Sanders has also joined the program. He was an IMG kid. So Elijah is a Bronx, New York kid. He played his freshman year for Syracuse. And that makes, another addition as we continue to learn about how Alex and his staff are going to fill this roster out. I believe there are 6 players on the roster now, and I think that's 8 or 9 spots left. So plenty of spots left to try to grab more talent. I mean, safe to say that on paper as of now, the group is very, very green, and we don't know much about them, so it's hard to analyze what they could be. 7 players on the roster now, so 8 open roster spots left. So we're about halfway home with Alex and his staff trying to fill out the rest of the roster. And as we continue to talk about year one in this Big 12 conference with Houston going to come back loaded with a transfer portal edition class and some incoming freshmen that will step up and replace some of the players that are leaving for Kelvin Sampson's national championship runner-up team. Kansas is going to be stacked. Down year for Kansas by their standards. And I could keep going, including BYU, who is not done in the transfer portal. So we'll see what happens. But Alex, Coach Chilius, and the rest of the staff, they've got a lot to do to try to fill out this roster. So Utah football welcoming in a former 4-star wide receiver out of high school coming up this weekend for the Forever 22 game. And Alex Jensen and Raphael Chilius and their staff, they add a guard out of Syracuse. His name is Elijah Moore, who will play for the Utes next year. All right, fun time of year if you're a basketball fan. Fun time of year if you like NBA playoff basketball. The Jazz are done for the season, but we'll do some Jazz basketball and some lottery and some big picture playoff basketball with Richard Smith live in studio for an entire hour coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. Just a brilliant U2 song coming into break. Look at that. Porter Larson. Excellent, excellent choice. I'm going to bring in Dave McMenamin today, our celebrity NBA reporter. Covers the NBA for ESPN. Pablo Mastroianni, the head coach of Real Salt Lake, will roll by. We'll do a little sports court later on. But live in studio for an entire hour, looks like he's ready to go sailing off Nantucket with a nice collared shirt and a Columbia jacket. Richard Smith, how are you, sir? Let's get his microphone on.
Are we okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Are we good? Yeah, thank you. Spence, you know, when I show up, I always got to live up to the East Coast Checketts reputation, you know. And that's,
I'm wearing sweats.
That's a New England, button down, collar,
blue collar, rose risen from concrete,
right,
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right, I'm wearing sweats. You literally look like you summer off Cape Cod.
Thank you. Well, you have an image you're trying to create. I don't have an image, so I'm trying to create one.
Yeah.
It's not going very well, but, you got to make the effort.
I think it's going well. I think you look good. But it's cold. It's April, and it feels like February. It's cold outside.
It is cold outside. Hey, but I'm switching gears for 1 second.
All
Have
right.
you talked anything about your guy Porter, who's doing his best 1980s Bono imitation here with the hair?
Oh, with the hair? No. So what he does,
shoulder length
we've worked,
hair.
we've worked together for 4 years now. What he does is he lets it grow out, then he shaves it.
Is that his deal? Yeah.
Porter, speak for yourself in here, pal.
A little annual buzz, yeah. That's about it.
When he shaves it, it's quite jarring because he'll walk in after he shaved his head, and he looks like he's 14 years old.
It's
wild.
It's funny you say that because Linda and I went to a documentary that was just one night only thing last night on John and Yoko living in New York City in 1970-71. It was like a 18-month thing all during the civil rights movement and everything. And one of the last pictures they showed in documentary as they were fading out at the end of the film was, kind of a picture montage of John Lennon in the 70s living in New York City leading up to his death in 1980. And one of the pictures they showed, which I had never seen before, was John Lennon with a shaved head. And I had never seen, where was that picture? And it came and it went, and I had never seen that kind of thing before. But I've heard of people who grow their hair out all winter long, like Porter, and then at some point in the spring they have a rite of passage and they go out into the flower fields and they bend down and they do whatever they do and they have herbs and stuff and smoke and then they shave their head and
Porter, does that paint an extra picture of how you shave your head?
Mine's more of like a Britney Spears moment, right? Where you're going crazy because of the hair and the wind, and you're over it. So you have a moment, you break down, attack the paparazzi and police officers and shave your head.
Have you in all of your years, have you ever had longish hair?
Oh no, that was my deal in college.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Were you like a flower child?
I'll have to show you. I was doing for a while in college in the 70s. I was doing my best James Taylor imitation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever James
I need
Taylor
photo
had,
evidence of this.
Whatever
maybe.
he had on the latest album cover, that's what I was going for.
Okay. That's not a bad blueprint to follow. JT had good success with the ladies, but I need photo evidence of you with your long flowing locks.
I a couple years ago went to my 50th high school year, and isn't this great radio for our listeners out there?
We got
Sports
4 hours,
radio.
Smitty. Go ahead.
I go to my 50th high school reunion a few years ago, and I checked into the table for the big dinner that night, and I look like this with my short hair and whatever, and the woman behind the table looks up and goes, here's your badge, and gives me an ID that has my name and my high school yearbook picture with it, right? So that's for everybody to recognize everybody else at the reunion and people you haven't seen in years. And I immediately took it and glanced at it, and I handed it back to her. I said, you've mistakenly given me someone else. That's not me. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. And then she starts fumbling to try and look. And I go, Susan, that is me. Give me that. And she kind of looked at the picture. She looked at me and looked at the picture, and she goes, oh, that is different. She goes,
What do you expect? 50
like it's
years
not going to
later?
be 50 years later.
Yeah, 50 years later. I think I have my 30 next year. Wow, that's wild to think about. Just dawned on me. I think I have my 30 year next year. But let's move on to your points. Nobody gives a rip. All right, there are a few things I wanted to do with you today. But since the season is now officially over for the Utah Jazz, I really don't know how much meat is on the bone for us to kind of talk about what we just saw. I just wonder how you digested. You were at most, if not all, the home games when you were in town. They lose 65 games. They go 17-65. It is the worst record in the history of the Utah Jazz. Yes, we all know what they're doing and why they're doing it. But how did you digest this year? Somebody that was over there for 40 years and saw a lot of winning. What was it like to be in that building and see the losing on a level that we've never seen it before?
Well, it's difficult, for the franchise itself. I mean, they have new ownership the last several years. They have new direction in the front office. They have the new coaching staff, obviously a young new team. Everything's been wiped off the board, and so they're doing everything from scratch and trying to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. It's difficult to watch any team, in my opinion, and we've talked about this before, Spence, where the winning doesn't matter and that they're actually trying to position themselves, into a place where it gives them a better chance at a lottery odds and getting a better player through that process. It's for me personally, my own perspective, I don't like the approach just because I'm not a fan of what I interpret as trying to manipulate the system or game the system, by purposely losing games and falling behind other people and giving you a better chance. To me, that just goes against what the grain of professional sports is all about. You go out there, you have fans who are paying money, you have sponsors that are paying big money. You have the people the companies who are buying the suites, everything that's involved from a financial standpoint, and yet you're purposely, acting in a way that tells those people, well, we're really not trying to win, so we're not trying to make you feel good about coming to our event tonight. We're not really creating, positive vibes in that regard. We're out here to try and be as bad as we can, but to try and make it look like we're trying something. So, and it's all in the guise of player development, and we have young guys, and we're putting them out there, and which I get this part, because you have to do at some point some type of mining for gold, as it were. Like the prospectors in the old days who would go and put their pan in the water and shake it out, and hopefully they get a gold nugget or two. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're doing, with their players this season. They're putting different guys out there, different lineups, let them play, let them make mistakes, and eventually make a determination from the club's perspective. Who do we think can be a player at some point? Who do we think just doesn't have it? And we have to figure out a way to move on from them. And that's why you accumulate all these draft picks, because you're just trying to get, as Dennis Lindsay used to like to use the phrase, as many bites at the apple as you can. And so you're throwing guys out there. Well, that guy doesn't look like he's got it, so okay, let's put the next guy out there. And eventually you hope to find a guy or two or three, if you're lucky, through that draft process, that trial and error. And then along the way, you try and get something in a trade if that comes up. You try and entice a nice free agent to come. If you can do that, those are all parts of this process that they've been engaged in. But it's very difficult for the fans to watch it, because the fans are used to coming to a game, no matter what it is, their son's high school game or the college game, whoever it is, and trying to watch your team put its best foot forward to try and win the game you're playing. And the Jazz didn't do that this year. Obviously, they held out guys who were healthy. They got fined along the way by the NBA for doing that. It's just not a very good look to me for any organization that puts themselves in that position. They're not the only ones who were doing it. Several other teams were in that same kind of race, and the Jazz happened to win it by getting the worst record. So we'll see what happens on May 12th when the lottery balls come up, and see how that plays out for them.
So I wanted to ask you a question as it pertains to what we can learn from some of the numbers that were put up by some of the younger players. Kyle Filipowski second half of the season when he got a lot of starts and a lot of minutes. Had some really audacious nights with some big-time stat lines, and Isaiah Collier and others. I always bring up the Sharif Abdul-Rahim example. Antoine Walker, before Boston got good, was a guy that had 28 a night for teams that won like 20 games. DeMarcus Cousins. There are a lot of players over the years that simply have been able to take advantage of the fact that they got minutes and usage to put up numbers for teams that didn't win. How do we have any idea whether or not Filipowski or Collier or hell, I mean, any of them, quite frankly, when the Jazz are good again, hopefully at some point that does happen, and they have veteran players that are, or they just have good, really good players and they're actually winning games and they're trying to make the playoffs. Did you see things from these young players that indicate to you that maybe they can be the same players they are for this team, for teams that are actually good, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it is difficult to judge, Spence, because when you're put in a position like the Jazz, the team on the floor was put in this past season, they did not care about winning. In fact, you can make the argument, and you'd never hear them say this, and rightfully so, that they were trying to lose games. They're couching it all under the veil of we're in player development. So we're trying to sift through to see who can play and who can't, because as we try and build this team, we got to find out who's a building block, who's a pretender, and who we just need to move on from because it's not going to work, that kind of thing. So you put him in several different categories, right? Walker Kessler looks like he's a guy, right? So they think that he's one of those guys. Obviously, guys like Markkanen and to some lesser extent Sexton are proven players who can help you on the floor. And so now you're trying to find other guys. Is it the Collier kid who had some moments during the year? They made a big deal about him, setting the rookie assist record. His this season. They didn't talk about anything about his turnover rate, and ability to affect games. But that's okay. You're trying to find out, what can he do? Can he be something at some point? Obviously, he's got to fix his shot, and he's got to figure out a way how to make smart decisions when they're in front of him. But he does have a knack for moving the ball. He has a knack for pushing the ball up the floor, and he has a strong enough body that he can get into the lane and make some things happen in transition, which is a good thing. So they're looking for something like that. You got the George kid, who's played 2 years now. Probably the jury's still out on his ability to affect winning because he's a natural scorer, but he doesn't do much else. He doesn't make other people better when he's on the floor. In my opinion, his defense is atrocious, so that's a thing that you have to look at. But again, the way they were playing this year and not playing necessarily to be competitive and win, it's hard to know how these players' skills or what their talent level and ability is relative to being in games that matter night in and night out to try and affect winning. But, that's the only way you find out is if they're out there doing it. And sometimes you wish you could throw a guy or two out there with a veteran core that's competitive, that can win, putting out a guy like, for example, a Shandon Anderson back in the day who was a rookie, playing with a Karl Malone and a John Stockton and a Jeff Hornacek and giving him time with a mature, competitive group to do something and ease into an NBA career that way. Here, they have a few players, but they weren't playing them on the floor. Markkanen was out for so many games the second half of the year, just holding him out. Kessler didn't play a lot, who can be an effective player. And the guys who are out there, really can't affect winning that much. So that's a tough deal to be able to judge that.
Will Hardy and Justin Zanuck addressed the media on, was it Tuesday or Monday? I can't remember that for breakfast this morning. Anyway,
Monday. Yeah.
This week, Monday morning they addressed the media. And Will said the same thing about, there was some variance, but Keontae, Isaiah, and Bryce Sensabaugh, Keontae George, Isaiah Collier. He alluded to all three of them needing to be in much better shape than they were this year. That kind of caught me off guard. Because Bryce entered the league with a little bit of Jabari Parker, baby fat,
He's
right?
a little pudgy.
Yeah. And I always kind of compared him to Dennis Scott a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Scott was a guy that could really shoot it from three and never really fully got himself in a great shape. But what do you make of that? All three of those young guards, their head coach basically saying, like, you guys better come back here in better shape come fall.
Yeah, well, again, he's got a hammer, speaking of Coach Hardy, because nobody's untouchable and nobody's like a savior, right? And so you don't have to tiptoe around anybody in this group, starting right at the top, whether it's Markkanen and whether he might be a trade asset or something going forward now that you have him under contract. Kessler, who's a young guy who's going to be up for a rookie extension. We'll see how they handle that. But almost all of the roster, they're guys that if they don't do it the way you want them to do it, you just decide you're going to move on. And that has always been Danny Ainge's mantra also. Danny doesn't care about anybody. He kind of has a Jerry Sloan type attitude or approach to it where you say, I don't care who's out there doing the job. I just want you to do the job. And if you don't do it, I'll put in the next guy. It doesn't matter to me because that's what the job is. And so they have this clean palette, if you will, to try and tell guys, hey, you got to do this. You got to get better at this. I mean, the Sensabaugh kid to me at the moment is a one-trick pony. He makes three-point shots sometimes, okay? And he has stretches where he has trouble, finding the basket. Okay, he's got to get more consistent, but he's also got to show that he's in better shape, that he can use his body to get up on guys, to play defensively. The George kid, I don't know if he'll ever be any kind of a defender. That may be his mantra, but he's young also, but he's got to be able to figure out some other parts of the game other than just creating shots for himself when he gets out there. But, look, the way the Jazz are right now, Spence, and the way that they're set up, it's just like these other teams that are three of the top teams in the league right now. The teams that did this kind of thing just 2 and 3 years ago, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Houston Rockets, and the Oklahoma City Thunder were three of the worst teams in the league 3-4 years ago. They're now, this year, they had 3 of the 4 best records in the NBA. So they flipped the script. And how'd they do it? They did it with a mix of draft picks, of making trades that were timely for them. In the case of Cleveland, obviously getting Donovan Mitchell from the Jazz as a big key in that. They signed key free agents who maybe weren't top-tier guys at the time, and I'm speaking specifically of Houston, who brought in a Fred VanVleet from Toronto, and they brought in the kid from Memphis, the guard from Canada. He's escaping my name right now.
Dylan Brooks.
Yeah. But they brought in him as a tough enforcer guy, and they weren't really high-profile, top-tier free agents, but they were guys they wanted to bring in to fill a certain spot on their roster in terms of leadership in Fred VanVleet and in terms of toughness with Dylan. And then they combined them with draft picks like Şengün and the Thompson kid and the Jabari Smith kid. And all of a sudden, they've got one of the best records in the league and a nice mix, right? So that's what those guys are doing. Obviously, OKC did the same thing, in the draft where they got Chet Holmgren and they got the Jalen Williams kid from Santa Clara, and then they mixed that up by making the trade of a big-name guy, Paul George, at the time, who said, I don't want to be here. So they said, fine, moved him to L.A., turned that into Shai Gilgeous, and so now they got an MVP-level player who nobody knew that was who he was at the time. He was like a Markkanen-type trade asset that the Clippers were willing to give up. The Clippers would have never made that move if they could have looked in the crystal ball and seen 3 years down the road what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to be, right? But that's the kind of stuff that the Jazz are trying to put themselves in position to be able to do if and when those opportunities present themselves. So this is just part of that process that they're trying to get through to see if they can make improvements like Cleveland did, like Houston did, like OKC did, in terms of mixing and matching those different components to try and build your team up.
So let me ask you about Lowry and where we find ourselves right now. So the first year Lowry was here, 2022 and 2023 was his All-Star year. It's when the All-Star game was here in Salt Lake. And on the roster that year, Mike Conley was his starting point guard. Jordan Clarkson, Chris Dunn, Simone Fontecchio, Talon Horton-Tucker. I was never a big fan, but a veteran player. Kelly Olynyk, Colin Sexton, Jared Vanderbilt. He had grown-ups around him, namely Mike, who's awesome, right? Before they traded Mike away. So I'll never agree with the direction that they went in. I just never will. The half-ass measure didn't work. I was never going to. But that year, when he actually had veteran NBA players and how to be pros, he was about 26 points a game, 9 boards, 2 assists, shot 50% from the floor, almost 40% from three, and 88% from the line. All-star, 66 games played. All right, last year, you're looking at 23 points, 8 boards, relatively similar splits as far as the shooting goes, 55 games played. This year, 19 points, 6 rebounds. Everything was down. Shooting splits, rebounds, assists, everything was down for Lowry. And I give him a lot of grace and space because he's been playing with children this year. So year one, All-Star Lowry Markkanen, 26, 9, almost 50, 40, 90, veteran teammates. Year 3, Lowry Markkanen, numbers all the way down. Who is he, Smitty, in the NBA? Who is Lowry Markkanen?
Well, he's an excellent player. He's a top-level player to me when he has guys around him. And also, Spence, you got to factor in somehow, and this is where it always gets murky in the evaluation process, but you also got to look at what is my incentive, what is my motivation for playing night in and night out. When you come to a team the first year, he's trying to prove himself. He came from a team where it was a mix and match in Cleveland where they were trying to get their footing with other young guys. Now he's with his third team in 5 years at that time, and he wants to show, hey, I can be a guy in this league. And he comes in, and the Jazz are going through their transition thing, and he got a lot of opportunity. And it felt like that. They got out to that 10-3 start, and it felt like maybe we can still be competitive, with this group. And Markkanen, got in that rhythm and got into that space. Now you fast forward 2 years later, there's a marked difference in what the team looks like, in what the direction of what they are trying to do with the group. You're sitting there as a guy they just made a big commitment to financially in terms of a contract for $40 million a year for 5 years. They made a big commitment to you, and now all of a sudden you look around the room, as you say, and there's a bunch of kids in here from high school and college that I'm playing with, and so where are we going? Well, don't worry about it. We're just trying to develop guys, and and again. I'm positive, Spence, even though I'm not in the room, that no one there has ever said we're trying not to win, okay? But it's obvious, to anybody who knows anything about the game that the year was all spent on trying to figure out who the other players are and what the player development track is going to be. So if you're Markkanen sitting over in the corner, you're saying to yourself, well, so what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm supposed to score 35 a game and try and lift us up, or what's going on? And so, and they didn't press the issue, the Jazz, the second half of the year. They sat him a lot, right, when he was healthy. They got fined for it because the league said, hey, you can't keep doing that. And the Jazz looked at him kind of cross-eyed, like whatever, and they're just going to do it the way that they want to do it. And so with Markkanen, I think he's more like that first-year Jazz guy than he was this year's Jazz guy. I just think he's got to have that motivation, to be with a group that really is going to be competitive and where he feels comfortable that this is a group we can go out and really fight and give it our all night in and night out. Because when you're losing, Spence, in this league and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, it is a tough road to hoe. No matter what you say, no matter how you preach it, no matter what the fans want to scream about, he's making a lot of money, he should be doing this and that and the other thing. The bottom line is they're all human, and they all approach things a certain way. And for him, I think he's can be a main guy for a team, but he's got to have some help. And obviously, as we've seen, he needs a lot of help.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. One more thing, then we'll catch a break, and we won't do any more jazz because, well, Will, and it's interesting because you reference like they'll never say that we're trying to lose. And as I always say in sports and in life, do not pay attention to what people say to you. Pay attention to what they do, right? So it's clear that by their actions that they were throwing the season away in the name of draft capital. We all know what time it is. But Sarah Todd, Deseret News, asked Will, what type of player, what kind of players would you like to see acquired this offseason? And look, they all are going to handle things pragmatically and politically. They're going to say the right thing. And he said, we have a lot of talent in the building. Do they have a lot of talent in the building?
I think that jury's out.
Yeah.
And their defense is, statistically and
Second straight
analytically
year,
is the worst in the league. And so, is that talent? Because one thing you have to look at, Spencer, and you have to look in the mirror and you have to be objective about it. So you either have talent that is able to do it, or you don't have talent and they're not able to do it, or the third level is you have talent that can do it, but they're not being held accountable to do it. And so whatever category that falls in, right? And so some of that may have to be on the coaching staff if they're saying, well, we have talent in the room, and you're saying, well, the defense was just it continued to do the same thing, night after night. I watched them. They never changed up the stuff they were doing. And so is that talent that you're not holding accountable? Is it lack of talent? They just can't do it. They can't get over the screen. They can't get through the screen. They can't get back transition defense. They can't stop a guy out at the 3-point, whatever. So you have to evaluate all of those things and figure out which category does it fall in, and then you try and figure out your team from there.
Richard Smith live in the studio. We'll switch gears coming up on the other side. I had a really cool experience to attend a meeting today with the Miller family. Smitty worked for the Millers for 40 years. An announcement tomorrow that the Millers are about to take over majority ownership of Real Salt Lake. What was it like to work for the Millers, and what is the soccer club in for? And then we'll do a little lottery, and we'll do a little NBA playoffs. One more big segment with Smitty coming up on the other side. It has been cold. Then it was warm. Now it's cold again. But it is time to start thinking about your yard and time to start thinking about your lawn. IFA Country Stores, they have everything you need to care for your lawn, no matter its size or shape. Their 4+ lawn care program can promote healthy green grass this summer. Visit with their team of Pro Turf and landscape consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball and soccer fields, golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care that they can share with you about your yard. Only at IFA and online at ifa.coop. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go on a Thursday. Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on The Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Both, excuse me. Both Duke and myself had snacks during the break, Smitty.
See that?
Our station mascot, Duke, is in the house. My 4-year-old English cream puppy, who I love. He got treats, and I smashed a Uncrustables PB&J. So hence I'm working through it right now.
And I like the fact that once you bring Duke here, that, like it is at home with your family, everybody knows who runs the show.
Oh, yeah.
So I got that right here. So
You know what I get a kick out of? He's been coming into work now with me for a while. And, at the end of every segment, I have a read to do. I have a commercial to do. And whenever I start reading the commercial, he knows that we're about to break, so he stands up and gets excited because he knows he's about to get a treat.
Is that funny? When I had dogs years and years ago, I had the same kind of response. I had 2 dogs and a golden retriever and a black lab. Wherever they were in the house, as soon as I grabbed my car keys, if I was going to run an errand or something, they would hear that, and they would immediately run to the back door. And I would get to the back door, and I would look at them. What are you guys doing?
Where do you think you're going?
Come on, open the door. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
We know where you're going. And
I always, because every time I leave, he gives me the puppy eyes, and then I leave the curtain open so he looks out the window and watches me drive away. I have tremendous parental guilt when that happens.
I got it.
But they are life enhancers, man. I'll tell you what. If you're in a tough spot, I would consider a canine because they make a big difference. All right, Smitty, had a cool experience today. Steve Starks invited me and some other media members, Gordon Monson from the Trib, Aaron Falk, some others, to sit with the Millers and the Miller family. It was Steve Starks, it was Gail, it was Greg, and it was Steve Miller. And then they had members of their board there and some attorneys and such. And tomorrow it will be announced that the Millers are taking over the soccer club. They'll be the majority owner of Real Salt Lake. Ryan Smith and his group will exit. They're no longer involved. Of course, basketball, hockey, downtown project, a lot on their plate. The Blitzer group, Dave Blitzer, of course, is a very, very powerful, well-known owner across the landscape of several sports, including pro basketball with the Philadelphia 76ers. They're going to maintain a stake. So the club will be part of the Blitzer umbrella. I believe they have 7 soccer clubs around the globe, so I think that's a good thing. But I just wanted to ask you, I worked for the Millers for 7 years, had a great experience. It was a great company, great leadership. Obviously, Gail is one of the community gems that we have around here. She very much cares about Utah, very much cares about the community and doing right by the community members, not just her family. But I wanted to ask you what your experience was working for the Millers for 40 years. A lot of people at the soccer club probably listening today wondering what it's going to be like now that they're going to have new owners starting tomorrow.
Well, if the Millers have an active role in it, and if they set it up as such, it's going to give a lot of stability to the organization. Which being an MLS casual follower, being a Real Salt Lake fan, someone who goes to half a dozen, 7, 8 games during the season with some friends of ours, it's always. It's been interesting over the years to see, the ebbs and flows and the changes that have taken place, especially on the ownership level. The last few iterations. I think with the Millers coming in, my impression would be that they're going to bring some stability. They are the community, sports community here. They have set the standard. All their years of running the Jazz, of running the Bees, which they still have, that have now moved out to Daybreak, and they will have a calming influence on how the organization is handled, how they go about their business. They're very good about hiring people in the sports area, if you will, and letting those people do their job to the best of their ability and giving them the resources to do it, and also giving them the backing to make decisions when they have to be made. And so I would expect that they would take the same approach there that they have in their other sports entities, and would just provide that overall feeling that we have people who care about our community, people who have done this before, people who know how to handle these kinds of things. And the greatest part of that, Spence, is the word stability for an organization. We've seen it just this last week in the NBA. The New Orleans Pelicans fired their general manager, David Griffin, who was the victim of so many injuries and guys being out all year. And so you want to throw the general manager under the bus because of that. Okay. And then just today, the Sacramento Kings, similar thing where they have an owner who gets really involved and maybe too much so. I'm not there, so I can't say for certain, but they've always had those kind of fingerprints on that organization in that regard, where they hired Mike Brown, got him in the playoffs, gave him a new contract, got off to a tough start this year. They fire him the first month of the season, and now they fire the general manager in Sacramento. You have an over-involved owner who thinks they have most of the answers, and when something doesn't go right or you hit that's why Sacramento, which has a nice core at the moment, right? They got in the playoffs last year, had a nice little spurt there, but they're an organization that's had trouble getting footing for a long time, and that's because if you look over the history, there's a lot of stop and starts because the ownership just can't get on board with the stability part of letting it play out. Let's see what happens and all that. The Millers have done that before. I get the impression that the Jazz, the new Jazz ownership with Ryan Smith, that those guys are going to see through, their process here, whether you like it or not, whether it's yielding results or not on a timeline that any of us like. But it looks like they're in it for the long haul to let the basketball people make those kind of decisions. And I think that's what the Millers will bring in terms of the way the organization is run to Real Salt Lake.
The ownership conversation in the world of professional sports has always been fascinating to me because it seems like it's very easy to identify what makes a great owner, what makes a great ownership group, but it's impossible to tell somebody who has used their money to buy a thing, to run a thing a certain way when it's theirs, right? The golden rule, we talk about it on the show all the time. The man with the gold makes the rules. So it's, again, it's not that difficult when it comes to what the dynamics look like for a good ownership group. And as you articulated, it's simply identifying talented people, hiring those people and empowering them to do their jobs, and then get the hell out of their way. Provide the resources they need to do their jobs. And look, the buck has to stop somewhere. And so if you need to get involved, if somebody's not doing a good job, you do that. But it's the meddling owners. It's the owners that want to be famous. It's the owners that want to hang out with the players. It's the owners that want to give the interviews. It's the Jerry Jones effect. It's the owners that want to utilize. And more often than not, they are people that never made the team, but want to buy their way into the locker room, right? And there's one in New York that is still that way. He is moonlighting now as the opening act for the Eagles on tour, so best of luck to Jimmy Dolan and his kazoo, and hopefully that takes up most of his time because he's been such an atrocious owner for both the hockey team and the basketball team back there. But again, it's a funny conversation to have because to me it's not hard to identify what makes great owners. But it's impossible to tell these people who have utilized their own money to buy the thing, to run the thing the way you think they should do it, if that makes sense.
No, well, it's, I always call it the country club effect, Spence. If you have enough money, you can buy ownership, you can buy, a membership into the club. Mm-hmm. So now you're in the club. So now when you go to the meeting, you have a voice in the meeting of, whether we're going to change something at the clubhouse or at the pool or the golf course or whatever it is. This isn't that much different. I was playing golf the other day with one of our former executives with the Jazz, who was talking about ownership meetings back in the day in the NBA and being there with owners and being in a meeting with Commissioner Stern and talking about how some guys were just there at the owners, the main guys themselves for several different teams. They're, cajoling and joking and whatnot while they're in a business meeting trying to decide the fate of the NBA or whatever. And it was just another, a reason to have a couple drinks and get together and joke around because we're at the club.
Yeah.
We're the guys in the club. We're you and me, Spence. We're members of the club. Yeah. How about this? Whatever. And some guys know how to handle that, and some guys don't. And some guys, feel like this is just, look, we've said it before, Spence. Everybody who owns a professional sports franchise in this country, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the NBA, Major League Baseball, none of those owners made their money or have their primary business as the sports team that they own. They all got their money because of something else they did, whether now, of course, the big wave is IT and tech and the tech world and all that. And that's where Ryan Smith, comes from. Mark Cuban comes from. Larry Ellison from Golden State comes from. Steve Ballmer from the Clippers comes from. These guys come in and they have success in another entity of business, and then somehow, in some fashion, they have a feeling that they know how to run a sports team. Now, some of them are smarter than others, and they know, hey, I'm going to be around it, but I'm going to let the guys do what they need to do. Other guys like Mark Cuban, in the book I'm finishing, it just came out on Luka Doncic by Tim McMahon, who talks about, all the time, all the meetings, everything they had in basketball, that Mark Cuban, was, one of the louder voices in the room and always had the final say as the owner, for good or for bad, right? And so he had people around him who did all the legwork. And the hard part in any organization is if you have people working hard, people doing their due diligence, doing all of the legwork, all of the grunt work behind the scenes, and they do all that stuff all year long. And then if you have an owner who says, in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, I want to come in and pinch hit, and I'm going to hit a home run. And you have an owner like that, who thinks they have the answers, that's where you run into trouble, because, they haven't done all the homework. They don't know all the stuff that's going on. You have to hire people you can rely on that you feel have your best interest at heart in terms of running the organization the way you want it done. And then you really have to, be able to get out of the way and let them do what they want to do based on all the information they have. You have to rely on them. The Millers have did a great job of that for over 3 decades, with the Jazz, whether it was, drafting guys, whether it was like a big trade for the Jazz in the Jazz world with Deron Williams at the time, who was our best player. And the Miller family said, well, if that's to Kevin O'Connor, if that's what you think we need to do, we need to, get rid of our best player, that's, I don't know how that looks, but okay, that's what you say. And so they sign off on it and they let you do what you feel like you need to do. And so, teams that have the stability and have people in place that are allowed to, they're empowered to do the things that they are good at doing and that they work at every single day are the organizations that tend to have sustained success.
Juxtapose for me the Larry era when he was, because Larry was a big personality and he was front facing. And, I've heard pretty crazy stories that, that Frank and Larry and, my father and Larry over the years, maybe had some disagreements and such. And, Larry was one who was probably a little bit more involved, juxtaposed to when Gail became the face of the Miller organization after Larry passed. And, Gail certainly is very sharp, and I'm not saying that she's not, a voice in the room. But was Gail one more to allow space for the Kevin O'Connors and the Dennis Lindsays of the world to make their decisions in a way that maybe Larry was a little bit more front-facing and involved? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that what Gail did in the meetings that I was a part of over the years, that she listened to all the stuff that we had going on as a group, the things that we had laid out that we thought were going to happen. We always used to have a end of the year / beginning of the year meeting, which always happened around the draft. Mm-hmm. And it was to set the tone for what we think is going to happen in the draft. And right after that, usually a week after, is when free agency would start. And then it would also be, part of the so-called trade season in the summertime. So you laid out all the contingencies of what you thought might happen, what we thought we wanted to try and do, what we thought was going to take place in regards to the draft, what we thought might happen in free agency, or guys that we were going to target in free agency, and what the realities of making those kinds of things happen. All that stuff. We'd have all that stuff laid out all the time, and then Gail would look at it, and usually she or Greg, would have a couple of questions, mostly financially related, about is this going to put us in this kind of position, or is this going to affect us 3 years from now, or what, and all kind of long-term type stuff. And then they would just say, okay, well, it looks like you got it lined out, and you know what you want to do, and it makes sense. And they were there to really, in my opinion, to more or less guide the group as a whole, to just make sure that we were acting in the best interest of the organization in the long term.
Yeah.
And if they felt comfortable that that's what you guys are trying to do, and that this makes sense, and you guys have all weighed in and have sorted it all out, then it makes sense to us, and now we just move on. Some places don't operate like that. Some places have an owner who has all the answers and says, well, why don't we do this, and why don't we do that, and then you have to start spinning your wheels, because what happens is that if you have a situation where the ownership doesn't support you, or has a question about how you're going about your side of the business, and you can't get any traction that way, then they're just as likely to move on from you and bring in the next guy. And that's what we just talked about, in the case of New Orleans and Sacramento in the last week, and for different reasons. But those things happen when you have ownership that isn't really convinced that you have a plan that can work over time. And that's what you're always trying to present and have in place for them regarding the overall running of the business.
So a couple minutes left here, so let's move over and do a little lottery, because the Jazz season is over and the NBA playoffs are about to start this weekend. The play-in will finish tomorrow. So if you're a Jazz fan, the next exciting date is May the 12th. 14% chance to get the number one pick along with Charlotte and Washington. As a result of being the worst team in pro basketball, they will get a top 5 pick. I want to start with a macro question, then we'll hone in on the top, and we'll do a little Cooper flag before we say goodbye. All of the top 5 picks. So I know you're going to roll your eyes here, okay? But most of the experts, most of the people that do the mocks, most of the people that do this for a living believe this is a draft that has 5 really, really good players. So if you're a Jazz fan, that's good news, because you're going to have a top 5 pick. There's probably a gap between Trey Johnson at 5 and some of the other prospects ahead of Trey. All 5 of these prospects are either 18 or 19 years old. The list of 18 or 19-year-olds to come into the NBA year one and make a market difference, it's very, very short. LeBron, right? Garnett came in out of high school, and he was good year one, but he didn't turn into the big ticket until later on. You could go back to Moses Malone or Sean Kemp. We could have a conversation about the youngsters that actually did play well right away. But from a team-building standpoint, what's the risk of putting all your eggs in the basket of somebody who is still probably confused about making his socks match in the morning because he's still a teenager?
Well, regardless of what the situation is going to be, this is the position the Jazz wanted to be in a year ago. This is the route they've chosen. This is the path they've gone down all this season. Some of it just by the sheer makeup of their roster and not being quite good enough and competitive in a lot of games. Some of it by their own design in terms of holding players out and for the sake of so-called player development with young guys and hoping they would lose to get in this position. So whether they got here, just by the luck of the draw, or they got here by their own, way of working things, whatever it was, they put themselves in the position they wanted to be in. So now they've got a 14% chance. It works out. It doesn't work out. As you say, just for our listeners who don't follow this stuff all the time like we do, the Jazz, by having the worst record, the NBA lottery rules dictate they can do no worse than having the number 5 pick. That's what happened to Detroit last year. Detroit had the worst record by 5 games over the next worst team in the league record-wise, and they should have had the first pick because they were the worst team a year ago. But they went, because of the way the lottery ended up falling in their regard, went from 1 to 5. So they had the 5th pick instead of the first pick. The Jazz may have the same fate. May 12th will tell us that. But that puts you in an uneasy position because you want to have the first pick, primarily because you want to have the choice of who do we think is the best guy for us going forward. We don't want to have to take the last guy from the leftover of the group, and not have the freedom of choice, if you will. We remember, and I heard you use this reference yesterday, and talk about a draft in the past, in the Greg Oden draft, in the Kevin Durant draft, when you're exactly right, when you made the statement that every single team in the league would have taken Greg Oden at number 1. That was a done deal. That's it. He was the next Tim Duncan. He was the next Shaq. He was the next Hakeem, whatever category you want to put it in. So he's the guy. And Seattle lost the lottery thing as it did it at that time. Ended up picking 2, and Portland got number 1. They take Oden. Seattle's left with the leftovers, which happen to be Kevin Durant. Oh, thank you very much, but it works out. So the point being, you never quite know how it's going to go, but you want to be the team that's in the position to make the choice that you want to make, that you feel is the way we want to do this. We want to construct this. So is it going to be, did they get the first pick? Is that going to be Cooper Flagg? Did they look at it and say, well, most teams that are run, that are really good, have a good lead guard? And so is that the Dylan Harper kid from Rutgers, who's all of 6'5", 6'6", point guard, shooting guard, can run the NBA-type pick and roll, can get in the lane, makes free throws, hard-nosed kid, all that stuff. Maybe that kid, maybe that's the guy, to quote, start a team with. It's going to be interesting, and the Jazz have no play in that, Spence, by the way. They just have to sit on the sideline and wait. Yep. And this is, for our fans listening, this is literally a lottery where the ping pong balls come up. It's actually done now, computer generated with numbers, 4-digit numbers and blah, blah, blah. But it is literally, the luck of the draw as to whether you get 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the Jazz's case. So May 12th, we find out what that is. And then they'll have 6 weeks, basically, to figure out what direction they want to go in that regard.
All right, Smitty. Well, always great to see you. We'll see what happens. Next week, we'll do some more NBA playoffs because it gets rolling right now. But any exciting plans for? Are you in town? Do we keep you for a little bit?
Spence, I'm here for you as always. We're heading down a couple weeks though to St. George for the LPGA tournament.
Oh, very nice.
So that'll be nice. Right. That'll be fun.
Black
going
Desert
down there. Black Desert. Going down there to work down there. Linda and I are going to volunteer and take part in that and see how the Black Desert championship course is doing and see our first LPGA tournament, which will be fun.
That's awesome. Still looking for volunteers down there, you think?
They are.
Okay, good.
Still looking for people who, if anybody listening wants to get involved in Black Desert, you can get on their website and look at their volunteer opportunities. I think they're looking for people to come down. It's a fun thing to do, and the first time ever that the LPGA is holding a main event in the state of Utah, which will be great for all of our golf fans.
No doubt. Great to see you, my friend. All right.
Thanks, man.
Richard Smith stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Burt Brothers. With over 30 years of experience and nearly 30 locations, Burt Brothers ASE certified technicians bring expertise and professionalism to every interaction. One-stop shop for reliable repairs and maintenance, from tires and alignments to fluids and brakes. Tax Day savings sale is in full swing. Buy 3 tires and get 1 free on select Goodyear, Falcon, and Firestone tires. Plus, get an extra $50 off on purchases over $500 using the Burt Brothers card. Tax Day savings sale also includes saving $40 on your Valvoline synthetic oil change. Stop by a Burt Brothers or Tire Busters locations or schedule an appointment today to experience the trusted service that has made Burt Brothers a Utah favorite for over 3 decades. Burt Brothers, doing it better since day one. All right, Dave McMiniman joins us coming up next. We got Pablo on the show today, Pablo Mastroeni. We'll do a little sports court later on. Busy Thursday show. Good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Going to give away a free round of golf coming up. We're sending you to Forestdale today, the original Salt Lake City Country Club. Did you know that? Probably didn't. There you go. And while you're there at Forestdale, you can execute the vertical drop and the horizontal tug.
There you go.
Little Larry David golf swing.
Original, huh?
There you go. In honor of our guy, Dave McMiniman. I don't know that I've asked you this, Dave. Do you swing a golf club? You ever play any golf?
I think we actually spoke about it recently. I'll play a couple times a year, but I enjoy the game. I like watching it. I just view it as too much of a time commitment at this stage of my life. But, hopefully someday I get out there more often. I enjoy it, like when I do it. I think probably because I'm not good enough to have any sort of expectation upon myself. I could see people who devote all of their life to it and all the time they put into it. Like, it's got to be the most frustrating thing to then kind of get off your game and then be stuck in a round for 4 hours before you can get out of it.
We did talk about this because you used it as an excuse to brag about your pickup hoops game. I remember that.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Have you ever executed the vertical drop and the horizontal tug? It's actually a pretty good tip when you think about it.
I mean, one would think it would be good. No, I wouldn't even say that I have the golf coordination to understand a tip at this point.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, Dave, I appreciate the time today. We have some play-in action to talk about. We'll get to tomorrow's games in a moment. I'm kind of conflicted about Golden State Memphis because, first of all, to get vintage Steph moments like we got in the fourth is always awesome. And that's who Jimmy Butler is when he decides that he wants to play this time of year. That's why he has the moniker. I just don't know. After watching that game, Memphis counterpunches, Edey with 17 boards, Draymond's 6'6", 6'7", and Kevon Looney is fine. I just don't know that they have the size and the athleticism and the length on the perimeter to beat Houston. I know it's easy to say, like, they're going to take care of Houston because of their championship pedigree and they've got Steph and Jimmy. But what were your takeaways from what was a really fun game, watching Golden State win, and how do you think they match up against Houston round one?
Yeah, it was a really entertaining game. It was certainly the best one of the play-in tournament so far. But I agree with you. Some of the concerns you just brought up, I also have. And you think about Houston, their roster, they haven't gotten it done in the postseason, but they were able to continue to win games in the second half of this season where the West was all bunched up and you had, all these different teams with aspirations of finishing in the top four and hosting a first round series. And, lo and behold, Houston ends up in second. Like, they won a lot of high leverage games down the stretch, including one against the Warriors a couple weeks ago where Amen Thompson was stuck on Steph like glue all night, and Steph goes like 1 for 8, one of the worst performances he's had of his career. And all that's going to occur when the playoffs start is more of that. More double teams, more physical and energetic defenders being thrown at a 36-year-old Steph Curry. And he's incredible. And he looked relatively, by his standards, pedestrian for most of the night against the Grizzlies and then caught fire in the fourth quarter. So he's that good. We're not going to just dismiss his ability to still win games, but I by no means do I think this is going to be an easy series for the Warriors. I picked them, we had to do our expert picks or whatever on ESPN.com. I picked the Warriors in 7, more so out of, I'd rather be wrong than early to bury them. There's a respect factor there, but the Rockets are certainly capable of winning that series.
I wish I had the personal confidence and hubris to refer to my own picks as expert picks, Dave. I just don't have that. I'm sorry.
Hey, but the editors name it, right? We're not in charge of the headlines.
I'm just messing with you. They do have a young athletic wing named Jonathan Kuminga that might be able to help out. What's going on there? Can you shed a little light on this?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Draymond Green was asked about it directly, and he said, no, he's going to help us. We're going to use him. Obviously, though, you look back over the last several seasons, Steve Kerr has not trusted Kuminga in those big moments. And it's not like he just flat out doesn't trust young players. You see the minutes being played by Bajemski. You see the minutes being played by Moses Moody. He's been outplayed or perhaps just out-executed by some of his other young peers on that roster. Now, you look at Kuminga like he is built from, a block of marble. The guy looks like your prototypical wing, much like Amen Thompson. You're like, oh, man, this guy should be someone to extend the careers of Draymond Green and Stephen Curry by impacting the game as a 3-and-D guy. But just the consistency hasn't been there yet. And he had a stretch at the end of last season where he was kind of like a 25-5 guy. And you're like, okay, well, here we go. This is what they envisioned when they brought him into the program. But, there's been injuries this year, and obviously he just hasn't earned the minutes in Steve Kerr's rotation. Now, the good thing about having someone like him on your bench and out of your rotation is if the series starts going one way, that's a completely different direction that you can throw on the court, and it's like picking up a free agent in the middle of the series. And all of a sudden, if he is fueled by extra motivation of being benched before then, or if he finds a favorable matchup, or the Warriors scouting department found a certain rotation that if we put Kuminga out here against these backups for the Rockets, he's going to have a matchup to exploit. I mean, that's a great luxury to have if you're Steve Kerr and the Warriors. But, as much as that we've seen stuff like that happen before, we've also seen a guy come in, he hasn't played meaningful basketball in a couple of weeks and can't find any rhythm, and then all of a sudden you're out of the playoffs. So it's an interesting situation. Quite frankly, I think a lot of us around the league thought that when the Warriors were canvassing for deals leading up to the trade deadline, and they ended up trading with Miami, that it would have been someone like Kuminga included that the other teams would want over a guy like Andrew Wiggins, who was such a key part of them winning the championship in 2022.
I think we'll leave the other play-in stuff aside because Golden State, Houston is somewhat intriguing, but I think OKC is going to sweep whoever comes out of the West, and Boston and Cleveland are going to handle the play-in teams out of the East pretty easily. So we'll move on from that over to, the series that we know are going to be played in the matchups that we know are going to go down. And, man, we've got two series in the West where two good teams are going to go home. So let's start with Clippers-Nuggets. Ball Arena, Denver, Game 1. Saturday at 1:30 Mountain Time. Sorry, Dave, not to confuse you, because I know you don't really, Mountain Time's out this way. All right. So 1:30 Mountain Time. As we talked about this last week, when Kawhi's healthy, we're all just reminded of like, oh, yeah, he is one of those guys. And the Clips enter the postseason winning 8 straight. And the Nuggets, of course, fire their head coach. And, they still have that dude in Nikola Jokic. What do you make of round 1, Clippers-Nuggets? How do you think it goes down?
I think the Clippers, and a lot of it has to do with the reverence I have for Tyronn Lue coaching them. But really, Kawhi Leonard, even before that winning streak that they had to end the year, looked like the Kawhi Leonard who won multiple championships the last 6 weeks of the regular season. If you're going to give me him, plus Ivica Zubac's playing the best basketball of his career, plus James Harden. Obviously, we're all aware James Harden hasn't looked his best in the postseason throughout his career, but not needing to be the guy, throwing someone like Norman Powell having a career year, wing defender like Derrick Jones Jr. I really like the Bogdanovich pickup. I think they're a team that has a defensive identity that's really well coached with enough offensive talent to be a real threat. And, I mean, relatively unprecedented, the Denver situation. I think, Shams Charania reported the latest a guy had ever been fired before him was Hubie Brown. In a season, there was another example of Larry Brown being fired, but he had already accepted a job to go to college, so it was a little bit different. I know the Nuggets won their last 3 games of the regular season with David Allen after they made the coaching change, but I just feel like that's a lot. That's the elephant in the room that's really hard to kind of overcome. And let's not forget, they still haven't replaced the talent of guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown and Jeff Green since they won the championship a couple of years ago. And Christian Brown had a nice year. He was on my most improved player ballot. Aaron Gordon missed half the season. Jamal Murray missed half the season. Jokic is the best player on the planet, but I just don't think it's enough for them to get past the Clippers. Whereas I was giving the ultimate respect to the Warriors, not ready to be out on them too early. I actually feel kind of comfortable being out on the Nuggets right now. I think we're going to continue to see more change from them in the offseason, coming off what was kind of a rapid descent from a championship caliber team in 2023.
I can't believe I'm going to ask you this, but based off of what happened in the league this year, I think there's space for the conversation. And I've talked a lot on the show about an angle for Jazz fans to maybe take a little bit of hope in Giannis in Milwaukee and, Milwaukee winning a championship and Jokic in Denver and Denver winning a championship. And I used to throw Luka in there too. I mean, Dallas is a much bigger market than we are. But a lot of most of the international players that have, come here to play in the NBA, even Embiid and Shea, none of them seem to force their way out of cities, right? And so, but the Luka trade changed everything. Luka didn't force his way out. I mean, the exact opposite. Our guy was crying during intros. But if Denver loses round one, and I agree with you, man, I think the Clippers actually match up well in a lot of ways with Denver. What does the offseason look like? And can you make space in your mind for Nikola Jokic maybe asking for a different place to play?
Well, Josh Kroenke, their president of basketball operations, made it very clear that Nikola Jokic, out of respect, was told that they were going to make this decision, but he wasn't consulted on the decision to get rid of Calvin Booth and Michael Malone. But I do believe that the Nuggets will get him to sign an extension. Now, once he signs the extension, if things continue in this trajectory, a year down the line, will he ask out? I think that would be certainly possible because, one thing I found very interesting in making calls around the league and trying to figure out my awards ballot, one that perplexed me for weeks right down to the wire was what to do with MVP. And I was told by people who are in the know that while Jokic in the past kind of said, it's not that big of a deal, all I care about is team success, he actually did care about winning MVP this year. And he thought he was playing the best basketball of his career. And, hey, if I've won it 3 times already, then I should probably be rewarded with this year because the Nikola Jokic that's on the court this year is better than who I was in years past. The reason I bring up that information is if he's starting to care about these things, it kind of makes me think he's caring about legacy. And if he's caring about legacy and his place of where he stands among the all-time greats, he's not going to be satisfied with one ring no matter how loyal he is. And if the writing's on the wall that this franchise is in disarray and they can't get back on track with the snap of a finger, it would behoove him to look around the league and find a better situation.
So according to your tweets, your Twitter profile, J.J. Redick says that Shake Milton and Bronny James split time playing the role of Anthony Edwards on the Wolves scout team at Lakers practice on Wednesday. Shame on you, Dave. I know what you're doing. Why are you doing that? Why'd you do that?
You know what? The reason I did it, first of all, I was following suit from the Wolves reporters who gave us the wonderful update out of Minnesota practice that Joe Ingles was playing the part of Luka Doncic. But beyond that, I think it's a fun little wrinkle. I wrote a feature on this a couple years ago. The Lakers had their video coordinators play the role of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. So, I mean, it's not necessarily like a disrespectful move. It's kind of just a fun part of playoff basketball where you have a way to engage everybody in the building in the preparation. But of course, I mean, you could say engagement baiting. I would never say I'm above that in certain situations. I think it's an interesting factoid if you want to just be as positive about it as possible.
All right. Well, I appreciate you acknowledging all angles, even though I know exactly which one to land on. But we'll move on. Lakers T should be good, should be fun. You obviously are the Laker guy over there at ESPN. How do you think this one's going to go? Lakers T-Wolves round one. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough series for the Lakers. They are favored for a reason. They have home court advantage, but 3-6. I don't think it's really should be looked at as a 3-6 series. It's a toss-up. Lakers had one more win than the Wolves in the regular season. The Wolves coming off a Western Conference Finals appearance. Obviously, they changed up the look of their team, but Karl-Anthony Towns struggled last year through large swaths of their run through the playoffs. And Julius Randle has been a player that looks pretty comfortable over the last, 2 months of the regular season. Look at their bench, to have Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming off the bench, Naz Reid, one of the best 6 men in the league, Dante DiVincenzo can score in buckets. And then, of course, let's not spend too much time before we talk about Anthony Edwards, who's become more dynamic himself, led the league in three-pointers made, career high 27.5 points per game. So, and then obviously the size that they play with. So they're really tough. And the Lakers certainly did wonders for themselves by staying out of the play-in tournament, getting 9 days rest to get someone who's 40 years old a chance to get his body right in LeBron James, and allow J.J. Redick and their staff to really lock in on a game plan. But if they don't, come out of L.A. with a split, at least a split, I should say, to start off the series, I think they're going to be in a bunch of trouble because that Wolves team, they take their cues from the confidence of Anthony Edwards. And if he's leaving LA, flying back to Minnesota thinking, oh, we figured this team out, this thing could be over quickly for the Lakers.
Pistons Knicks. Let's do a couple of thoughts on the Eastern side of things before I set you loose. Pistons Knicks, everybody knows the deal. The Knicks couldn't be the Cavs or the Celtics all year. And the Pistons are probably the feel-good story of pro basketball. I've tried at times to draw a parallel to where the Jazz are at now and where the Pistons are at now. But the difference is Detroit has Cade, and he's awesome. Last year, Detroit was the worst team in the NBA, like the Jazz are this year, and they fell to 5. And hopefully that does not happen to the Jazz in the draft. So I think this will be a fun series. I don't know that Detroit is ready to beat New York in 7. This feels like it might be the only series that I'll pick the Knicks to win. MSG on Saturday, 4 o'clock, again, Mountain Time, Dave. But what do you think happens, Detroit, New York? How's it go down?
Thanks for the time check.
You got it.
I understand why this series is being looked at as a bit of a toss-up. Like Cade is certainly on the fringe of some people's MVP ballots. JB Bickerstaff turning that team around. They play a hard-nosed brand of basketball. I don't really see it being all that close. I think the Knicks will win relatively handily. I just think they have more talent. And part of the reason why the Knicks haven't looked all that great over the second half of the season is Brunson hadn't been right. But, by all accounts, he's ready and raring to go, and we're going to see the full Jalen Brunson experience in the postseason for a Knicks team that, had that great run that went to Game 7 of the second round before pretty much everyone on their roster got injured, and they didn't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, yes, the Knicks are a rung below the Cavs and the Celtics, but that doesn't mean that there's some vulnerable team that all of a sudden get picked off by an upstart group in the Pistons. Like, maybe the Pistons rough it up completely and beef stew out there, trying to mix things up and getting someone like Karl-Anthony Towns involved. And, sure, we'll take the cancellation of a 2 ejection because if we're the Pistons, we get the more talented player off the court. But I just, in terms of talent and continuity, I just don't see it. I think the Knicks will win that one in 5 or 6.
All right, back out west. Here's my question: Oklahoma City or the Field? If I made you pick.
Well, I'm gonna have to, I guess, keep my Homer hat on here because I think they're vulnerable, and certainly those 2 games that I was in Oklahoma City for about a week ago, covering the Lakers, I think the Lakers hit 39 3-pointers against them over a 2-game span, and 22 the first game, and then Oklahoma City has 48 hours to to prep and adjust properly to that, and then they go out and allow the Lakers hit 17 more. I don't think they are a juggernaut. And it's crazy to say that because, of course, 68 wins. I think there's only 6 teams in NBA history that have amassed more than that in the regular season. So, and I voted Shea for MVP. So there's a degree of certainly respect I have for that group. But, quite frankly, I think they would be vulnerable against the Clippers should the Clippers get to the Nuggets. And then I think they'd be vulnerable against the Lakers as well should the Lakers get to the Western Conference Finals. So I still have them as the favorite. But, I'll take the field because I just named 2 teams I think you can beat them.
Celtics are the field out east.
I'm taking the Celtics. Yeah, I think the Celtics above every single team in the league at their best have a different level of basketball than any other team can achieve. And if they are able to stay healthy, and, I know Ramona Shelburne reported Jaylen Brown getting an injection in his knee right before the playoffs began. That's a little bit concerning, certainly. But, they got through, half the playoffs last year without Kristaps Porzingis because they really know what they're doing. And they got, a great coach and great talent. So I have Celtics coming out. I think Celtics are going to win it all. I think it's going to be a repeat. And, we could get this awesome showdown of Lakers Celtics that Adam Silver and NBA executives are all salivating for up at Olympic Tower in New York City. But it could be pretty anticlimactic with the Celtics making quick work of the Lakers in the finals.
I'm with you. I think it's Boston again. Hey, before I set you loose, I will put on my black media magic hat and come up with a topic about the Utah Jazz. And simply just ask you this question, Dave. There are a lot of teams, namely Phoenix, but others, that have massive payrolls and have to make massive changes. And the Jazz are one of a handful of teams with very clean books and a ton of draft capital. I believe that they are long gaming this. Even if they get Cooper Flagg, I think we're in for probably another couple of years of big-time losing in the name of draft capital. But who are the teams and who are the players that you think could be had as a result of teams having to shed talent in the name of getting their books back where they need to be?
Listen, I think you look at a team like Atlanta. I don't think they're going to get out of the play-in tournament. I know they get another chance at it, but you look at them heading in the wrong direction since their Eastern Conference Finals berth a few years back, and you're like, what's Trae Young going to be there? Can you build around him? I would not surprise me really at all if they decide to move on from him. And, that's someone like if you're Utah, in your current iteration, maybe, Trae Young with a front court that features, 2 legit, fierce defensive-minded players and, Walker Kessler and potentially Cooper Flagg, all of a sudden Trae's warts on a defensive perimeter guy doesn't look so bad because he has those guys cleaning up his mistakes, and then you just love him as an offensive talent. That's the type of player I could see being moved. I'm still curious to see what happens if Miami, strikes out in terms of getting someone like Kevin Durant, and they are like, you know what, we're really going to go into next year with just Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo and pieces. That's a road straight to mediocrity. Do they disband this group and they decide to go into a rebuild? And then, those 2 players are guys as part of a group, those would be pretty valuable. I think you kind of got to look at those teams that are right around the 40 win mark and wonder. I think you look at the Sacramento Kings as well. They obviously just got rid of Monty McNair and they already got rid of Mike Brown during the regular season. Is the new general manager that they hired today, Scott Perry, is he going to say, I want to stick with this group, or Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, can they be moved? So I think there's going to be a decent pool of players like that fit the profile you're suggesting, and then it becomes about what Utah's timeline is. Do they want to really try to go for it? Or, would that be viewed as just more of a stopgap? And would they be better off continuing to stay pretty bare bones and add another piece in the draft in the years to come?
All right, my friend. Well, it's a great time of year if you're a basketball fan. Excited for the playoffs this weekend, Dave. I appreciate the time. Have a good one, okay?
Yes, sir. Anytime.
Dave McMenamin covers the NBA for ESPN. He stops by today courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. Chilly today, snow in the mountains, but the sunshine is on its way, and so it's time to think about your yard. IFA Country Stores have everything you need to care for your lawn, no matter its size or shape. Their 4+ lawn care program can promote healthy green grass this summer. Visit with their team of pro turf and landscape consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball, soccer fields, golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care that they can share with you about your yard, only at IFA and online at ifa.coop. And time now for our Festival of Tees. It's the ESPN Festival of Tees, powered by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, the Sean O'Connell Show, and the Drive with Spence Checketts from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700 and the Utah Golf Association. Details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. All right, I gave you a golf tip, courtesy of Larry David, prior to the Dave McMenamin interview. What is that golf tip? Text it in to 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. Porter will pick a winner. First person to text in the Larry David golf tip. We're going to send you to play at Forestdale, which was the original Salt Lake Country Club. Little knowledge for you guys on a Thursday. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. We switch gears. The head coach of Real Salt Lake is Pablo Mastroeni. He stops by. Coming up on the other side. 4 o'clock hour starts next right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Real Salt Lake in the midst of a bit of a road-heavy portion of the schedule in Nashville last week, but they will be home coming up on Saturday against Toronto for a 7:30 kick. It is cold today, but Saturday looks all right. So maybe Saturday night we'll get a little luck with the weather. And time now for it's becoming a very regular conversation with the head coach over Real Salt Lake, Pablo Mastroeni, on a Thursday afternoon. Pablo, happy Thursday, sir. How are you?
Happy Thursday, Spence. Doing great, bud.
Appreciate the time. So let's look back at Nashville. Nashville 2-1, final score. Looked good for a little bit. So before I get into some specific questions I have for you, now that you've had a chance to digest the loss and go back and look at the tape, what'd you like and what'd you not like, Pablo?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good stuff. Again, building off that LA Galaxy game, I thought, going on the road, Nashville was in a good run of form. I think we played them really, really well. 1-1 into, I think it was the 75th minute where we scored a goal, and it was called offsides after VAR. So, again, the referee didn't call it in real time and took it back. So now we're 2-1. And then I think in the 88th minute, it was we gave away just a very soft PK, and it ended up determining our fate in that game, which was really difficult to kind of stomach, given the way that the guys played. And I think what's really important for our group, Spence, and really any team, is putting together two good performances that get two really good results, right? So 3 points, or in this case, 3 points at home and one on the road, we take that and we can continue building. Where I felt like this week we had to go back and talk about, very fundamental aspects of the game and how you have to walk gingerly in the box when your opponents have the ball in there, and you can't be clumsy. You got to move your feet. So a little step back, but I think overall it was a really good performance that was marred by some, non-calls. There could have been a red card in that goal that they called back on VAR, and then our penalty kick. So definitely defined by a couple moments in the games that sealed our fate in that game.
Dom gets the goal in the 12th, and Diogo gets that assist. So take us through what'd you like about that build-up, and the redeeming thought of Dom being able to find the back of the net and another assist for Diogo.
Yeah, no, again, that's there's so many moments where, we saw that they wanted to get pressure on the ball, and we had to break through we had to get through our midfield to get to our attacking midfielders, and that play was textbook. Diogo got on the ball, took a good look at goal. Dom was there to clean it up, and one of the things that we've been working with Dom is in that final third area is making sure his positioning is such that it's not too wide, where we're actually threatening from that wide position. So kudos for him for really tightening that up and being in a great position. And again, Diogo getting on the ball. And I think if we get Diogo on the ball in the attacking third, and we got guys like Luna and Dom and Ari or Jesus, crashing the box, we're gonna score goals, and we're gonna create a lot of good opportunities. So it was a really good play that culminated into a really good goal.
Okay, the goal that was called back, the offsides. Walk us through that a little bit. And I felt bad for Jesus because he was so excited, and it was a great ball and it was a great finish. And I didn't even, watching it on TV in real time, I didn't even consider that could have been an offsides penalty. So your thoughts in the moment, and you went back and watched it. What do you make of how that all went down?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the whole purpose of VAR is to take back a play that was egregiously miscalled. And what's interesting with the offsides is we don't have the technology in VAR in our league that has these lines that go across the field that they use to validate whether or not, given the angle of the camera and all these things, could be misleading. And so the fact that the linesman on the ball side didn't raise his flag, and then you go back and watch it, and sometimes you watch it with the understanding that it was like they called it offside, so you're looking at it from as offside. But it was, for me, it's still, it's not what VAR is meant to be, and especially for offsides call, where there's no objectivity other than using a camera that's at a slant, and because we don't use those lines that make it objective. So that was really the disappointing part. But again, a really good play where Emeka finds Diego finds Diogo releases Dom, and Dom was in across behind the defense with Jesus finishing. I mean, it was like training ground type play that was eventually nullified. So it was a bit disappointing. But again, we create more of those actions, we're going to create more of those goals.
All right, now over to the PK, because it looked like you guys were going to escape with one at least, instead of walking away with three. And look, in every sport, a veteran player knows the way to massage the game to get calls in his favor or to get in the head of a young player. And that Mukhtar kid is a really, really good player. But from my vantage point, it felt like he knew, I think it was Nelson, was kind of on his back. And he initiates the contact and then just goes down in the most soccer dive annoying way of all time. That's what I saw. You tell me what you saw.
I think you're right. I was angry at the call, but I was also angry at his cleverness, right? Like, I was angry at both of those things in one moment because, again, it was super soft. But the thing so just going back and looking at the play and my conversation with the pivots is when you're recovering, so the ball's on the left side of the box before it gets crossed. And, it's the old Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck is going. Don't skate to where the puck's at. Like, it's the same. You can use that for recovering pivots when you're going from midfield to now into your box to recover. Is what is the play saying? Where is the danger area? Where's the ball going to eventually go? Because that's where I want to run to. So that was the first problem. Is his recovery wasn't in a position that was advantageous for us defensively. The second part was because he wasn't proactive in his recovery, then it's a reactionary. It goes over his head, and now he's just chasing the ball without really seeing the sight of the player. And then, like you said, Mukhtar just does what veterans do, and he realizes that he's coming full speed, and so he just gets in the way of Nelson's run, which is, it's cheap, but it's smart, and that's the type of cleverness that wins you games or wins you moments that help you win games. And so that, it was frustrating, but again, it's a good learning moment. And if that happens again, then we have some big problems. But I think for all of our pivots who, they're learning, they're getting it. And we talk about it, we go through it on training field. So I think it's going to be one of those moments that we'll learn from and won't happen again.
I'm stretching my memory, Pablo. I'm getting a little bit older, but I seem to remember a midfielder with a little bite who played for the Colorado Rapids who may or may not have at times enjoyed executing some, shall we say, dark arts here or there. Is there a part of you that tips the cap to Mukhtar and says, well done, sir?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I said I was angry with his cleverness, because it's genius. And again, and that's the thing that, that's what experience will bring you. The same thing in the other box, right? With guys that have been around, they know like the angle of attacking the ball. So it's not just to recover the ball. That's just playing the game that's in front of you. But there's a game that's happening within the game. And if you can get into that level, now you're multidimensional, and that's where you can really you dictate what the referee calls, how to get under people's skin, and there's another game that's going on. And so, fair play to Mukhtar, and for us, definitely a learning moment.
So as far as the learning moment goes, it's hard to even be mad at Nelson, right? Because what's the lesson? Do you just let him know, like, hey, when you're around a savvy vet, you've got to be a little frosty? Like, what are the teaching talking points after something like that, Pablo?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So again, it's that moment happened because his actions were reactionary. In other words, if he was recovering to a spot, so the ball gets played out to the left side, right? And as the weak side pivot, so the weak side central midfielder, you've got to get to a spot defensively that covers the back line. So that's the first part. That's really the teaching moment. So again, you know where the ball is, you know what's happening over there. After 2 seconds, you glance there. Now you're spending the rest of your time recovering to a position where you identify Mukhtar, because Mukhtar was floating in between the lines, right? There wasn't a center back with him. He was just kind of floating between the lines. So as a pivot, I'm recovering to Mukhtar. That's my point of reference, right? That's the danger guy in this moment that can affect our defense, right? So that's really the teaching moment. And then the other teaching moment is you don't try to win the ball in your penalty box. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. but you don't make tackles in your penalty box. What you're doing is you're literally playing like top defending, where you're moving your feet, you're using your arms, your hands to keep the player moving away from the box or to pass the ball to another player that's outside the box. But anytime you go into challenge, like to win a ball, you're putting yourself at the mercy of the referee's discretion, right? And then all the dark arts from your opponent. So there's so many variables that come into play when you try to win the ball in the box. So we talk about moving our feet, blocking the ball. You can block the ball, you can shepherd them out, but you just don't want to make tackles in the box.
Interesting. Before we get to the players that are not on your roster, because we have to get there in a moment, was Forster unavailable? Was he hurt when you guys went to Nashville?
No. Again, I think we've he had a really good run of games, and we weren't able to produce enough attacking output. So my conversation with him is we just got to give other guys a try. Like, we just got to figure out between Ari, between Forster, Jesus, who's the guy that's going to be the most compatible with the players that we currently have, but also, either creating a goal scoring opportunity or scoring himself. And so it was just basically coach's decision as far as why Forster wasn't on the roster.
So you went with Ari to start and Barea as the sub. Take us into that mentality, and how do you analyze the way those two handled themselves?
Yeah, no, I think Ari, again, my expectations for Ari is what he's been doing, right? If given, this is his first professional season, right? He played a few games in Australia, came over. So, like, my expectation is that he's not going to come out of the gates in his career in our league that's very difficult, and it gets more and more difficult every year, but he's going to be just banging goals left and right. Like, that's unrealistic, right? But his runs are really, really good. His hold-up play is getting better with every game. He had a really good chance in the first half that just missed the post. So he's doing everything from at least my expectations. And so then the thought was, Jesus is a very technical guy. He's clever with his runs. I think Ari went 60 minutes. Let's give Jesus a run here to see if we can't get a hold of the ball. Because, again, what Jesus does is he does a really good job of bringing teammates into the game because he's technical. He reads the game. And so that was the thought with that decision.
I wanted to ask you this because I asked Kurt this earlier when he joined us this week. Two-part question. Are you a fan? This is the wrong week for me to ask you this, but are you a fan of VAR? And if you are not, what are some changes you think they could make to the way that this system has kind of manifested itself to maybe improve on the product?
To be honest, I think it was better before VAR. And I'll say that because you have the same feelings that you do now, right? But now there's this new technology, but it leaves both coaches feeling the same way that you did before there was this technology, right? So it's like there's this review thing, but, like that, for example, that the red card review, that was, rarely does it go to VAR if there's a red card where it's not a red card, and they came back and gave him a yellow card. And so I'm like, wait a second, if your fourth official is saying that was an egregious foul, that was a red card, well, then give him a red card. But to go back and review it and not give a red card for that, I'm thinking, what's this whole process for? Like, and again, like the red card we had against Dari when we played Dallas, it's the same thing. If you slow things down at the microsecond, it looks a lot different than the feeling and the actions that actually existed in real time. So I guess to answer your question, I'd like to, because both coaches, both teams, all fans, they're going to feel the same way after a VAR call. And I'm saying, can you capture the moment in real time, the feeling of the game and what that was? And you're still going to be wrong sometimes, but at least you caught it in real time. And it puts an onus now on referees to be a little bit more, on top of the game versus having somebody to fall back to then give to then make a call that was reviewed in microseconds and maybe not the best angles as well. So I think I'm a fan of not having it.
I know it's been a little bit of a rough start, through eight matches, but I wanted to ask you a macro question about these 8 games. As you guys have analyzed And Kurt walked us through some numbers. Obviously, Kurt's very analytically driven. Through 8 games, what are you guys doing well, Pablo? What do you like that you're seeing so far?
Well, again, I think between the boxes, we're doing well. In other words, the stats that aren't significant to results. I know, so like our ability to control the game with the ball has been really good, both home and away. Defending between the boxes has improved drastically in the last 4 games, so that part's really well. So just going over the game, 6 of the 9 chances that Nashville had against us came from dead ball situations, which are throw-ins, their goal kick, set pieces, second phase set pieces. So like these are all controllable moments where we actually have a chance to set up. So that's been the difficult part, and so that's what we focused on this week and we use the slogan, when the ball is dead, we come alive, right? When the ball is dead, you think, I'm going to get my chance to rest. But no, this is when you come alive, because this is when we're conceding our most chances. So I think the areas where we've been deficient, obviously, scoring goals has been another area. But I think, again, the rhythm of play has been better. The chances have improved. The quality of chances have improved. So I think we're trending in the right direction. And this is what I alluded to at the beginning is you got to put 2 good games together with 2 wins in order to validate the work, and the belief system goes up and the confidence goes up. And that's why I think the result against Nashville left a bad taste in our mouths, because I think we're on the cusp of really finding our form, finding our way, and getting good results.
Before we get to Toronto, your opponent on Saturday, the way you kind of broke down where you feel like you guys are excelling does indicate you might have a hole on your roster. And, of course, I will ask you once again, and I know you might get sick of it. I had to ask Kurt this week, and I feel like he wanted to strangle me through the phone. But, Pablo, we're less than a week away, man. We just are. And then that window closes. Then you have to wait until the summer, and the season might be tough to get back at that point, as you know. So for the RSL fans that are glued to the radio waiting for the one question they probably have been wanting me to ask you for 20 minutes now, what is the progress? Where are we at? Are reinforcements on the way?
So I might get in trouble for saying this, but I've been told that we are going to get a big player across the line.
Okay. So
now that's me probably speaking out of turn, because again, like these things, Spence, like I've said all along, and that's why I've been hesitant. There's so much that has to go through, but I've been told that we're going to get this across the line. Those are our expectations. So I'm going with that. And this player could be coming at a better time. Like I said, I think we're really moving in the right direction with the way we want to play and all these things. And him coming into a group that's confident and that's building towards something special, I think is a great environment for which to come into the group. And there's also a possibility of adding a little bit more experience to the roster, and that hasn't been yet solidified, but I think we're close there as well. So I'm optimistic. I'm an eternal optimist. I feel like we're gonna turn things around shortly here. I feel like we're gonna get a couple players in, and we'll be moving full steam ahead.
Music to our ears. Before I set you loose, Toronto rolls into town on Saturday, and they have not won the game all year. They've played 8 games. They've lost 4. They've drawn 4. I'm not one, based off of my experience at MLS, to say a game in April is a must-win, but this feels like there's maybe a little heightened pressure for you on Saturday night. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, just based upon the fact that we're doing everything that we're asked, that's being asked of the guys. They're putting in all the work, and we're up against the Toronto team that have actually had 3 or 4 good results in a row. And results, I mean, they've drawn. They haven't won, but they've played some really good stuff, and they've played against some really difficult teams, right? They went to Miami and got a draw in Miami, which they probably should have won that game. So again, in MLS, there's no easy game. So we've got to be on top of ours in order to beat these guys. But yeah, I feel like obviously, we didn't get off to the start that we'd like. But again, I think it's calm when bullets are flying, making sure that we're doing all the little things that we can control to put ourselves in the best position to win this game on Saturday.
All right, my guy. Well, I appreciate the time. Have a good final couple of days in training, and then best of luck Saturday night, okay?
Thanks, Spence. Appreciate it, bud.
Pablo Mastroeni, if you missed it, he said he has been told a big player will be signed prior to the transfer window closing, which is 6 days away from right now. All right, before we catch a break, Ryan from the Dish Pros, give him a call at 801-424-DISH. Just save a bunch of money on a bunch of things. That's the bottom line. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, thanks so much as always. Great opportunities right now to save money. Listen, if you got that oversized bill, you didn't even notice that your cable bill, your DirecTV bill, or even YouTube, you see that big rate increase. You're ready to pay more, or you want to pay less? Get a bunch of free stuff. Let us hook you up with dinner at JCW's, free movie channels, get you the biggest DVR in the planet, guys. 2 terabytes, 16 tuners, auto records your local channels, auto records your games. So simple and easy to use. Plus, with the Hopper Plus technology, guys, you can have all of the apps at your fingertips that you want. So if you want to have a couple apps to tie everything together, not a problem. One remote, and we got you covered. Call us today. Let's get you installed and get the best price guaranteed. Plus, guys, if you didn't notice, you maybe got a little mailer from Dish. Maybe you didn't see it. They sent about 70,000 of them out just last week. Call us up. We'll actually double check to see if you received one of those. That may be a big fat gift card we can attach to the offer. About 60% of the time, where I'll link those up to a customer. So call us, 424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH.
Ryan from the Dish Pros. The weather's about to get warm consistently. I know it's cold and rainy and snowy today, but it's time to start thinking about your lawn. And IFA Country Stores has everything you need to care for your lawn, no matter its size or shape. Their 4+ lawn care program can promote healthy green grass this summer. Visit with their team of Pro Turf and landscape consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball and soccer fields, golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care they can share with you about your yard. Only at IFA and online at IFA.coop. All right, coming up, do a little sports court with our friends over at Handy and Handy. Then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Thursday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday right about now with our good friends over at Handy and Handy. It's Garrett and Preston. Handy on a Thursday afternoon. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How are we doing?
Hey, Spence. Good. How you doing?
Hi, Spence.
All good here. Always appreciate the time. So this story out of Tennessee with Nico Iamaleava, they're calling it a holdout. His family is taking umbrage with that term. But this is kind of a new dynamic in the world of college football. So walk us through it, guys. What's going on here?
Yeah, Spence, I'm glad you said the name for me. I'm going to call him Nico. So who is Nico? Nico, he was a high school recruited by everyone, and he decided to go to Tennessee. And as part of going to Tennessee, he inks and signs, I mean, it's important here, signs an NIL deal with the Tennessee Collective for $8 million, $2 million a year over 4 years, reportedly. Well, fast forward a couple years here, and he's now the starting quarterback at Tennessee, and by all signs, he's a pretty good quarterback. I wouldn't say he's, an NFL lock or, one of the best, even best in the SEC. Well, spring practice comes around, and guess what? Our guy Nico, he doesn't show up to practice, and so what's reported is he is trying to renegotiate his NIL deal. So that's important too. Trying to renegotiate his NIL deal and holding out. So this becomes very public. Word is stuff like this goes on in a lot of schools behind the scenes, but this becomes very public. He holds out. The important part is he signed a contract, inked a deal. Now he's holding out, and he's trying to negotiate a deal. So the question is, a lot of people are coming out, and what happens is, he knows he can enter the transfer portal, right? So he knows he has some leverage here. And, it seems that a lot of the sentiments around the country, especially with the athletic departments and the coaches are, that no player should hold a team leverage and, hold leverage over a team and hold them hostage. So he has entered the transfer portal. All bio reports he is not going back to Tennessee. So the question, I think this brings up some legal issues that haven't really been come out yet. But the question is, he inked a deal. He's holding out, trying to negotiate. So the question is he breaching the contract? Well, in most situations, that would be a breach of contract. And, in the NBA or the NFL, if a player holds out and doesn't show up, well, guess what? They've got a contract, and they don't get paid. That part of their contract, they don't get paid for that time. And, maybe it ends up a renegotiation. Maybe it ends up in a trade. But those are the strongholds that teams have in the pro sports. So that's a question I have is, is this a breach of contract? And our guy Michael McCann, he says this is really interesting. He says that the player has substantial leverage. If he were sued for reneging on this or backing out of an NIL deal, he would argue that the contract is unenforceable. So on one hand, it's enforceable, but on the other hand, it's not enforceable. It says the NIL statute explicitly forbids compensation provided in exchange for athlete performance or attendance at an institution. He could insist that it was mainly play for the Vols and the contract should be deemed voidable only at his discretion. I think that's a really crazy thing, but that's where it is. And then I have another question. I'll throw this out to you guys. What do you think players in the locker rooms around the country, his locker room or others, are they cheering him on, thinking, yeah, go get it? Or is it kind of like, hey, we're relying on you, and you're not going to be here now, and now we don't have a quarterback?
Yeah, I would imagine in every locker room outside of Tennessee, they're cheering him on, but I can't imagine they're too happy in Tennessee right now.
Yeah, it's the ever-evolving world of NIL. We'll talk about some a little later in another story.
Yes, sir. Garrett, you're up, bud.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's the ever-evolving world, and there's just not a lot of legal precedent anyway for any of these cases that we've been talking about that are arising out of NIL and transfer portal issues. It is an evolving area of law.
All right, moving over. You guys are making me work today. I think it's Lucia Surenko from the WTA Tour, a female tennis player, suing WTA Tour over the Russian invasion. This is a meaty one. What's going on here?
Yeah, Lucia Surenko. It is a tough one. So she's filed suit in the Southern District of New York in federal court She's filed her lawsuit against the WTA Tour and its chairman, Steve Simon. And really what this arises out of is her feelings around her treatment as a Ukrainian player versus some of the Russian and Belarusian players on the tour. And I guess there's a lot of them. And so, of course, when the war broke out, the WTA apparently had come out with some statements condemning the war and Russian aggression and that sort of thing. And but on the other hand, the WTA has said, well, we want to support all these players, on their merit and not penalize them based on the country that they play for or from. And so they can continue to play on the tour. But what this Serenko, what she's wanted apparently is a little more, and it's even a little hard to tell, but a little more support from the tour, being a Ukrainian player on the tour and having to play these Belarusian and Russian athletes, tennis players. And so she's alleging that there was a phone call with the chairman of the board of the WTA who made some comments saying, hey, if people want to support the war, they can. That's their opinion, and that this really offended her and led to bouts of insomnia and some crying episodes. And so, I mean, if we really just distill this down, I think she's making a claim for negligent infliction of emotional distress. That she was in tears over this and hasn't been able to play tennis yet. She, made a big statement on Instagram or whatever and on social media. And so this case just getting filed, but kind of interesting, just involving, the different nationalities of players and these feelings around the war.
All right, Preston, you're up here.
Yeah, one of her claims, and this is how some lawsuits are actually proved, she claims that there's a withholding of information and essentially, hey, WTA, you set a policy. You set a policy that you were going to abide by, and you didn't abide by it. And so they're going to dig into some of these things. And if there's stuff in writing, and I'm sure that there are releases to these players stating what the position is going to be, I think that's where she's going to try and prove her case. I mean, Garrett talked about all the things she claims in terms of emotional distress, but she's got to prove her case. And I think what she's saying is, you guys set a policy and you didn't abide by it, and here's what happened to me.
All right, my goal every day is to learn something new, and today I learned that fleur de lis is French for flower of the lily. All right, so we move over to the world of pro football, believe it or not. The Saints have been sued, I guess, by somebody who's an alleged King of France descendant, saying that he owns the rights to this situation. You know what? Go ahead. You guys are up. What's going on?
It's awesome. Apparently, this has been going on for 10 years, and we've on the serious side, we've talked about several copyright infringements, trademark infringements. That these things are in place for a reason. Where teams have these copyrights, licenses, trademarks, and they see someone use something similar to it. Well, they go out and say, "Hey, this is going to create some confusion in the marketplace." But apparently, our guy for 10 years, we're going to call him the son of the kings of France. He sued the New Orleans Saints, saying yes. They say this is his family owned property rights to the fleur de lis. We've all seen this, the emblem of the Saints. It's on their helmet. Anyone that's watched football, if someone showed them that, they say, "Oh, that's the Saints." Well, this has been going on for quite a while, and apparently it made it through the trial court. He lost it in the trademark trial and appeal board, and it's gone now to the Federal Circuit Court. And again, the Federal Circuit Court comes in and says, "Sorry, son of kings, we hope you have something else to hold on to here, maybe a jeweled crown or something, but you're out of luck. This is the flower of the lily is the Saints' property, and they have it. They apparently in 1974, different than a trademark, but it was called a service mark at that time, which I'm sure has been renewed as a copyright and a trademark."
All right, Garrett, you're up here, bud.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here that this long-lost descendant of the King of France is probably a fan of a rival team like the Atlanta Falcons. It's just looking to cause trouble for the Saints because it's hard to really even take this lawsuit seriously.
We'll stay in the world of football. Let's head down to Miami. The Dolphins, they won a reversal in a case where a fan didn't, quote, possess a ticket. The time is yours. What's going on here?
Yeah, so we do this all the time, right? We transfer tickets to each other, and we transfer them electronically. And so the question that is coming up here is when you transfer that ticket to someone else, you may have purchased it originally, but you transfer it to someone else, what's transferred with that ticket, right? And one of those things is an arbitration clause. That's the fine print on your ticket, right? That says, hey, if I'm at an event or I'm at, the stadium watching the Dolphins and I'm injured, which is what happened here, that my case is going to be, or any claims that I have are going to be bound by arbitration, this arbitration clause. And so that's what happened. She was just a bystander, and there's another fight that breaks out, and she gets, I guess, hit in the head and slammed into the wall, and just as a collateral damage, and so she's injured and brought a lawsuit against the Dolphins in the stadium, kind of that they didn't supervise, they didn't take steps to prevent this from happening, that they were negligent, and so there's been a fight over whether or not this case is going to have to be heard through arbitration. So now the Florida Court of Appeals has weighed in and said, yeah, that arbitration clause is going to apply. So it's a pretty broad, interpretation of this arbitration clause, that it's going to just follow that electronic ticket, even if you didn't yourself buy it, but maybe someone else bought it for you and, scanned and got you in. You're going to be bound by that. That's what the Florida Court of Appeals is saying.
All right, Preston, you're up.
Yeah, just a cautionary tale to people. When you sign, you have a ticket, you're essentially entered into a contract. The contract allows you to get entrance, but you also have certain duties. You're bound by certain duties, and you get certain benefits. And, I think, the court pointed out that, hey, if we didn't allow this to happen when people transfer tickets and, this followed them, it would be a lot of confusion and create a lot of discord. But now she has a chance to pursue an arbitration.
All right, final one for today, a case that a lot of people that follow and care about college sports and college football are paying close attention to. It's the latest with a Jaden Rashada case over what has been characterized as an NIL deal gone bad, and kind of waiting to see how this plays out because of the precedent that it may set. So final one for today, guys. Unpack it for us.
Yeah, first thing, Spence, if we didn't have if NIL didn't create all kinds of legal issues, we'd have to find a lot of stuff to speak about on sports court.
That's a good point, yeah.
Looking back at the first story, Nico, well, how the tables have turned, right? Our guy, Rashada, he originally left, he had committed to Miami, and a few years ago he decided to jump to Florida because they promised him a really fat NIL deal in excess of $13 million. Well, he gets up to show, and apparently, no one's ready to make good on the promise. So what does he do? He sues the University of Florida and a booster, claiming a number of things: tortious interference, conspiracy, fraudulent misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. So he's named Coach Napier. He's named the University of Florida. He's named apparently this booster who has some auto ownerships. And the first thing that the defendants do in this is they file a motion to dismiss. Well, the judge comes in and says, no, we're not going to dismiss it. We're going to allow this thing to go forward. And her comment is, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand how a purportedly fraudulent NIL deal initially valued at $13 million could induce a teenager, that's going to be part of the legal claim, to choose a university he otherwise would not have. And it says, that he was allegedly misled into signing with Florida. So this is going to go forward. And where this is going to get interesting is this is going to get into all kinds of emails. It's going to get into documentation, texts, everything, discovery of really what was the agreed to deal, what had been represented, how he was induced. And one thing the University of Florida might jump in, and I don't think they've done it quite yet, is that might have been the part of the dismissal, but that they have sovereign immunity. It's called governmental immunity when you're a state university, that you have certain protections that private entities don't have. So the interesting thing is, I think he jumped to Arizona State, didn't he? And now he's at Georgia. And, hold the phone. He might be, we might see him at Tennessee next year, who apparently doesn't have a quarterback. But it's interesting, I think really interesting, that we pointed out that a school, if a player breached the contract like Nico's doing, they really don't have grounds to sue him because it ends up being pay for play, and nobody wants to say those words. Yet our guy here, Rashada, he can sue, and it's going forward.
All right, Garrett, final word is yours.
Well, I mean, we talk about this case. We've talked about the Tennessee quarterback. I mean, it just astounds me how badly over the decades the NCAA has just thoroughly messed this issue up. And now with the cases that we've talked about a lot here, right? O'Bannon, the House case, with these cases and the Alston case, right? And just has opened the floodgates. And again, now it's the Wild West, and there's a lot of legal precedent that's going to need to get set and figured out, and that's what's happening.
All right, gentlemen, before I set you loose for this Thursday, for any of our listeners who have any legal questions, how do they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yeah, we're happy to help any of the listeners out with legal questions that they have, especially in the area of personal injury, which is what we do. You can reach us at 801-264-6677 or go to our website, handylawutah.com.
Thanks so much for the time. Have a great weekend, and as always, go Utes.
Thanks, Vince. Go Utes.
All right, before we catch a break, 5 o'clock hour of the program comes your way. Coming up on the other side, a Utah football transfer portal storyline about a wide receiver that will be here this weekend, and a Utah basketball edition via the transfer portal. Let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH, where you can save a grip of money on a grip of different things. What's going on, Ryan?
You sure can. And, guys, the offer is super sweet right now. And with price increases just kind of been normal. You're just seeing them all over the place, from Netflix to YouTube TV to obviously cable and direct TV. Guys, you see these big increases, and you probably don't even know that you're overpaying so much. Call us today. Take advantage of the offer with Dish. It's a 2-year promotion. The price is guaranteed not to change. Plus, you're going to get a bunch of free stuff from us, dinner at JCW's. We'll also check and see. They sent out about 70,000 of these pre-qual mailers all over the valley. You may have got one in the mail, but like a lot of us, we throw them away because junk mail. But we have a tool now where we can check to see if that's available to you. And if it is, then we'll attach a big fat gift card on top of the offer and save you even more money. Because these are the stories I love. It's when we get a customer that gets a gift card, we lower their bill $100 to $200 a month, saving them thousands, and you get the best equipment out there. Biggest DVR, auto hops everything. Netflix, YouTube is automatically built in. Plus, you have the ability to add every single app you want into the system. So you can have the apps, you can have the traditional TV, you can have the best DVR for the very best price. Call us today, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, before we catch a break, it's time now for our Uinta Golf PGA leaderboard update. Visit one of 5 Utah Uinta Golf locations or online at worldwidegolfshops.com for deals on the latest Ping drivers, Callaway AI Smart Face clubs, TaylorMade as well, their QI35 woods, and check out the deals on the Titleist Pro V1X golf balls. PGA Tour, after their stop at Augusta National last week, a historic Masters tournament won by Rory McIlroy, who grabbed the career Grand Slam, becoming the 6th golfer of all time to do so, has made its way to Harbortown Golf Links in Hilton Head, South Carolina for the RBC Heritage. And how about this leaderboard? Justin Thomas cards a 61 today for 10 under par to lead the way. Russell Henley and Scotty Scheffler, because, of course, at 7 under par. Wyndham Clark at 6 under par. Brian Campbell, Matt Fitzpatrick, J.J. Spahn, Gary Woodland, and Brian Harmon all at 5 under par. Notables, we'll point out, Keegan Bradley at 4 under, as is Patrick Cantlay. Tommy Fleetwood, Jordan Spieth, 4 under par as well. Justin Rose, who finished the Masters as the runner-up to Rory McIlroy, finds himself at 4 under par. Shane Lowry, Lucas Glover at 3 under par, as is Sam Burns and Victor Hovland. Xander Schauffele at 2 under, so is Colin Morikawa. My gosh, that is a jam-packed leaderboard with some of the best golfers in the world. Another rough round for Tony Finau, who is tied for 61st after a 72, which puts him at 1 over par. So there you go. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Thursday afternoon starts coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get a Drive at 5 time. Thursday afternoon, 3 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock. The sun is trying to shine. It has been cold today, unseasonably cold on this mid-April Thursday afternoon. Snow in the mountains, rain in the valleys, and more on the way tomorrow. Looks like we have a decent weather weekend coming up. The Saturday night RSL match should feature fine, not great weather. And looks like we're going to have maybe some 60-degree weather on Sunday, and then next week looks very spring-like. But as it is every day, it's good to have you along for the ride on this Thursday afternoon. And the 5 o'clock hour of the program is brought to you by our friends at Cortland Roofing. Cortland Roofing is your go-to for all of your re-roofing, roof repairs, and roof maintenance needs. Free insurance analysis and free estimates, plus senior discounts. More information can be found at cortlandroofing.com. All right, a lot going on a busy Thursday show. The NBA play-in tournament continues tomorrow, the final round of the play-in to determine the 8 seeds in both conferences. The Heat and the Hawks will play for the right to be swept by the Cavs, and the Mavs and the Grizzlies will play for the right to be swept by OKC. Not sure either of those series will be interesting. The action last night was not near as good as it was prior to. The Mavericks pretty much handled the Kings with ease. And then Tyler Hero put on a show, and Miami ousted Chicago. So Sacramento goes home. Chicago goes home. Sacramento, after firing Mike Brown earlier this year, fired their general manager earlier today. And Scott Perry, former general manager of the New York Knicks, looks like he's headed to Sacramento to take over the Kings operation. And then, final round of the play-in tomorrow, and then the playoffs start for real coming up on Saturday with a full slate of games. First game will be Milwaukee and Indiana. And Dame Lillard was given the green light, former Weber State star, to stop taking his blood thinners for that blood clot. And he's going to miss game 1, but questionable for game 2. The second game will be the Clippers and the Nuggets. Man, the West is just loaded. Madison Square Garden sees the Pistons and the Knicks. And then the Timberwolves and the Lakers are your late game from Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles. So NBA playoffs right around the corner. Of course, the season is over for the Utah Jazz, and we await May the 12th, which is the date where we will find the fate of the Utah Jazz draft lottery odds. As the worst team in pro basketball, the Jazz cannot receive anything lower than number 5. Okay, so they will have a top 5 pick. But hopefully for the first time in franchise history, lottery luck shines the way of the Utah Jazz, so they can grab number 1 overall pick and draft Cooper Flagg, which certainly will color the context of what the offseason will look like. So that's the next day of interest for Jazz fans. The RBC Heritage is going on right now. The World of the PGA Tour has moved on to Harbor Town Golf Links in Hilton Head, South Carolina, after their stop at Augusta last week. And JT, Justin Thomas, 10 under par 61, round 1 card score for JT. Russell Henley and Scotty Scheffler at 7 under par. Wyndham Clark at 6 under par. And so a fun tournament on a beautiful golf course. The transfer portal is open in both the world of college basketball and the world of college football. Josh Furlong, our buddy from KSL, who joins the show from time to time, is reporting that Micah Hudson, who is a former 5-star receiver, will visit the Utes coming up this weekend. And, of course, this weekend is the spring football game for you Utah Utes fans. Excited to see you out there at Rice-Eccles Stadium for the Forever 22 game. Go to UtahUtes.com for tickets and join us up there. And Coach Witt, addressing the media earlier this week, actually said that the spring game will be kind of a combination of a mini scrimmage and then kind of like live drills. Now, we've discussed this on the show with schools like Florida State and Nebraska and others, I think USC. A lot of schools have just ditched the spring game altogether. Looks like BYU is heading in that direction as well. I don't know what this means for the University of Utah. I mean, they branded it as the Forever 22 game, but I do envision a day in the landscape of college football where spring games are basically light practices or maybe kind of even like Pro Bowl skills challenges. There's just too much at stake, and certainly if you're a Utah football fan, a little PTSD with the lack of health in the program over the past couple of years, so many players being hurt. And there's no way to make sure that everything is as kosher as possible when it comes to health if you're just playing football. I mean, hell, if you're just running, you never know what's going to happen. But spring game coming up this week, Micah Hudson, who is a former 4-star high school wide receiver, looks like he is going to visit coming up this weekend. He had a unbelievable high school career, hence the 4-star rating. He was the number 16 overall prospect in the country, according to the 247 Sports composite ranking. In high school, over 200 receptions, nearly 4,000 yards, and 37 touchdowns. So we'll see. We'll see, how this goes. We talked about this with Bill yesterday. The transfer portal boxes that need to be checked for Utah football. Wide receiver seems like the most obvious need. Coach Witt has asked about it almost every media availability. Hudson began his college career at Texas Tech. Didn't play much. Went over to Texas A&M. And then that didn't stick either. So looking for a spot to play with 3 years of eligibility remaining and a red shirt if he decides to use it. So Coach Witt, Jason Beck, asked about the wide receivers a lot. And looks like they're going to bring a talented one in Micah Hudson. And we'll see if anything else kind of comes to fruition that way. The Utah basketball program also made an addition. It was announced, I think, last night or maybe this morning. Elijah Moore is transfer portal addition for the Utes out of Syracuse. He played his freshman year at Syracuse. Elijah is from the Bronx, New York. And, yeah, as a freshman played for the Orange, and now he makes his way out here to play for Alex Jensen. Alex Jensen, as a result of the Dallas Mavericks winning a basketball game last night, is not on the ground yet full-time. He's going to finish out his experience with Dallas, and then he'll be on the ground here. But, of course, we are seeing this puzzle finally come to fruition piece by piece. Elijah's best game last year, he had 24 points against Tennessee, 19 against Cornell. Ever heard of it? A little school called Cornell. And then 16 points against Maryland. One of the top shooters coming out of the draft in 2024. His composite ranking, according to 24 Sports, is 93, and he's ranked as the number 59 prospect in the class. On the whole, the numbers weren't great. 5.2 points per game, 39% from the floor. Piece by piece, the roster's coming together now. Kendall Sanders, who we talked about, James Okonkwo, who we talked about, Terrence Brown, the FDU transfer, Keanu Dawes, of course, is coming back, E.B. Traore, and Alvin Jackson. So Utah's roster right now is a total of 7 players, leaving them with 8 open roster spots as of right now for the Runnin' Utes. And so we've heard, the additions on the coaching staff. That's starting to come together a little bit. And then ultimately we have to see what the rest of the roster looks like. And hopefully year one in the Big 12 for Alex Jensen and his staff just shows the community, shows the fan base that this is moving in the right direction. I'm not sure how much there is to really expect with a conference that is going to be as jam-packed on the basketball side as the Big 12 will be next year. Houston is going to be a major problem again. If you look up what Kansas has coming in with their recruiting class and their transfer portal, they're going to be a beast. And BYU and Kevin Young building a massive basketball program down in Provo. There have been some online reports of the Phoenix Suns contacting Kevin Young. I have no idea if that's the deal. That's the problem with trying to consume online information. Of course, Kevin spent a number of years in Phoenix as an assistant. Obviously, Matt Ishbia has deep pockets, and the Phoenix Suns are in need of a new head coach after firing Mike Budenholzer. Would Kevin Young listen to an offer like that? Well, sorry, BYU fans. The answer to that is unequivocally yes. Because if Matt Ishbia decides to pay Kevin Young $10 to $12 million a year for 5 or 6 years, guess what? He's going to listen. So those are just reports that are flying out there. Not really sure if that's even a real thing. Can't corroborate it. But it is that time of year after the NBA teams who are not in the playoffs finish their season. Some tough decisions are made. Coaches are fired. General managers are fired. And then the roster construction begins. The NBA draft will be on June the 25th. And want to remind you, our draft coverage on this station will be second to none. It's myself. It's Gordy Chiesa, Bill Riley. We might even bring Smitty in to pinch hit a little bit to give us some insights. And Smitty spent 40 years in draft rooms and war rooms getting ready for the draft. Speaking of the draft, 1 week away from today is the NFL draft. And Shedeur Sanders held a private workout today for the New York Giants in Boulder. So the Giants, of course, that number 3 pick. NFL draft seems to get interesting at 2 with the Cleveland Browns. Maybe Travis Hunter is the pick there. Then we'll see what the Giants do at 3 after Cam Ward appears to be the pick at 1. Aaron Rodgers spoke today and said a whole lot of nothing on the Pat McAfee show. He took a lot of shots at the Jets, said he's focusing on his personal life right now. Retirement is an option. Admitted to a meeting with Brian Daboll, the head coach of the New York Giants, and said he has spoken with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But no news imminent as far as where Aaron may play his NFL football coming up next year. Real Salt Lake is back in action on Saturday against Toronto. here in our market. It's kind of a road-heavy portion for RSL, but they do have a home game on Saturday. It's going to be 7:30 Mountain Time on MLS Season Pass. That's your Apple TV coverage. It should be a kind of a chilly night in April out in Sandy. But tomorrow, a historic announcement will be made. About 10:30, we're going to have sound and coverage for you. I'll be out there at America First Field as the Miller family will announce that they have acquired the majority ownership stake in Real Salt Lake and, of course, the Utah Royals as well. So it'll be a busy Friday for the club, busy Saturday with the game as well, and excited to see what the Millers are able to do with this great community product. All right, we'll do a little more basketball coming up. For this Thursday afternoon/evening edition of the show. Not a ton going on tonight. There's a little hockey as we are high speed ahead to the end of the NHL regular season and time for a little Stanley Cup playoffs. The NBA is dark tonight before their final two play-in games tomorrow. to determine the 8 seeds in both conferences. So tomorrow night, the Heat and the Hawks. It's a 5 o'clock Mountain Time tip in Atlanta on TNT. The winner advances on to get smoked by the Celtics. And then the Mavericks and the Grizzlies later on to the FedEx Forum. And the winner of that game advances on to get smoked by OKC. The losers go home. And maybe Alex Jensen will be done with his contract with the Dallas Mavericks and land here to coach the Utes full time. 17th head coach in Utah basketball history. Let me be clear. I'm not one to judge, okay? I'm not big on judgment. I don't like other people's judgment. I'm not judging at all. Have you been following the story of Bill Belichick and his girlfriend? So Bill Belichick just turned 74 or 73. No, Bill Belichick just turned 73. His girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, is my son's age. She is 24 years old.
That she is.
And like I said, I'm not judging. You know, like, do what you got to do. All right? I let me tread lightly here. I think I see what both parties are doing here. Okay? And, all right, not judging. Like,
right.
Jordan, you do what you got to do. Right? I'm not sure how long Bill's going to be kicking around. And once Bill passes on to the other side, sounds like Jordan's going to live a very comfortable life. Bill at this age is probably looking for a little companionship. Porter, maybe we'll leave that there. Is that kosher with your understanding of the scenario?
It seems like that's it. What you're saying is you don't think this was like an organic, they met on Tinder or at the bar.
Please let Belichick just be swiping on Tinder. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's a situation. It's interesting. I've seen them like Bill Belichick doing things that I would never imagine, like TikTok dances, and I've seen him like out clubbing on some videos. I mean, I guess if you're going to be a college football head coach in the NIL space, get yourself a pretty young girlfriend and lean in, I guess. Is where Bill Belichick's going. Good for him.
Well, The Athletic obtained some emails today that Bill Belichick is demanding that the administrators at the University of North Carolina copy her on certain emails. And Jordan, who is 24 years old, is now been found to try to educate the staff at UNC about how they should refer to Bill, how they should refer to Bill's son. And she is making men, like, for instance, she is saying that they need to refer to Bill as, quote, the greatest defensive mind of all time. Like, she is now telling administrators at the University of North Carolina how they are supposed to refer to her boyfriend via email.
Yeah, that's an odd dynamic, regardless of who you are, who your partner is. That's like some Jill Biden energy, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep. And, if you're Bill Belichick, my guess is the conversation, because my guess would be this is not his idea. My guess would be Jordan, lovely young lady, comes to her boyfriend and says, hey, I want to be involved. And, I would like to be copied on these emails. And I'm sure Bill was just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, Bill seems like pretty much for, I don't know, the 30 years he's been maybe longer than he's been in the public sphere. That kind of seems like his MO. Whatever. I'm going to focus on football. Whatever. You deal with everything else.
This is an interesting read from The Athletic. Let me credit Matt Baker for this read. So Bill Belichick, happy 73rd birthday. His girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, 24 years old. Let's not put labels on love, kids, okay? Let's not judge other people for their choices. I guess we'll see how this plays out. Like I said, I think it's pretty clear to see what both parties are gaining from this. Porter, here's a lesson for you. Ready? Do you have a pen in your hand?
Right here.
Okay.
I got it up top.
Memorize this. All relationships are transactional.
Okay.
They just are.
In some form, yeah.
Yeah, they just are. And by the way, I mean all of them. There's no exception. All relationships, by their very nature, they are transactional.
And maybe your transactions you're prioritizing different things.
Sure.
But you are trading off either energy or money or whatever it may be. So yeah, you're not wrong in that.
We'll go with energy. We'll just leave it there. And love is a Hallmark creation that isn't real. Okay? So all relationships are transactional. You've all been lied to about love.
You want to expand on this?
No, today? I don't. This is an interesting story, okay? 73 years old, 24, and now she is educating the staff at Carolina about how they need to refer to her boyfriend and his son.
That part of it, if I were like an admin in North Carolina, I'd be like, yeah, we're done with this part of this transaction. But I guess Bill might be holding the cards there.
The biggest of eye rolls occur when she walks in. Let's be clear. Like at these meetings, these administrators, like she walks in starting to make demands. These people are probably like, what are we doing here?
I was going to say, yeah, that's something that clearly I'm not an administrator, nor is that a job that you should ever give me. But if I were, I would push back on that, right? Bill Belichick can tell me what to do. His girlfriend that just graduated college, is not going to be telling me what to do.
She strikes me as a emerging influencer. But can you imagine being asked to spend any time or energy on those emails that you have to send to her and then being instructed on how you have to refer to the coach and his family as a result of these monikers she's emailing you? I would not be cut out for that, man. I would quit.
I was going to say, that sounds like something that I would not be doing for very long as an employee.
Fair enough. All right, well, enjoy your Thursday night, kind of a quiet sports night. We've got a busy Friday show with a fun, exciting, historic announcement coming up tomorrow. With the Miller family announcing they will take over the majority ownership stake of Real Salt Lake. We've got Utah Spring football with a Forever 22 game coming up on Saturday. NBA basketball will be back. Transfer portal is open in both football and basketball. Yeah, a lot to do, man. Really, really busy. And 1 week away from the NFL draft. Porter, what comes our way on a Friday edition of the show?
Everything you just mentioned on a Friday show. Howard Beck, Tony Jones on the NBA, Paul Pugmire talking some golf. Of course, our weekly check-in with Paul, talking PGA. We may hear from Stevenson Sylvester. If not, I'm going to be up on campus with the offensive and defensive coordinators tomorrow morning, so we'll have some sound from then. And then we'll finish off the week the only way we know how. RSL, Utes, Bill Belichick, whatever it is, with our guy Chris Comrani.
CK will have a take on the Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson relationship. Hey, like I said, not judging, 73 years old, 24 years old. You crazy kids, go have a good time. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today, Richard Smith, Dave McMiniman, and Pablo Mastroeni. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show, website is ESPN700sports.com. I listen to our station using our mobile app. It's the best way to do it. You can take us on the go. If you're walking the dog, it's the ESPN 700 app available in the App Store or the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, it is 2025. Chances are you listen to podcasts. Well, we're asking you to support ours because it helps us. Wherever you get your shows, just search The Drive with Spence Checketts. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. You will be eternally blessed. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Thursday evening. We will talk to you on a weekend edition, a Friday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can find that right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network.